everybody. Welcome to 372 Pages We'll Never Get Back, the podcast where I and Mike Nelson read books that we do not expect to like. And Mike...
Podcast,
yes.
Wow, is that the new... Is that all the kids are pronouncing it that way?
Oh, God. We're off to a strong start. This is the
podcast.
Ogden Podcast.
Yes.
Where we read books that we do not expect to like.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reading Bridge to Bat City by Ernest Cline, acclaimed author of Ready Player One and author of Ready Player Two and Armada, and this new book for young adult and or mid-grade children. Mid-grade children. That sounds like you're really just insulting them, doesn't it? Like,
it's like the we were talking yesterday, my wife and I, about how, because she's doing this old movie, about how before the 50s there were the teenage culture. So all these old people are scratching their heads. What is this new teenage phase? That's me with the mid-grade. I don't know. What are they? What kind of things do they like to listen to? I don't know.
It does seem like you've unnecessarily parsed things out where, like, early, when I was growing up, it'd be like, yeah, you hit 10 years old, you read Bridge to Terabithia, the kid dies, and you get sad. Like, there's no need to be like, well, he's 8.5, so can he read the Animorphs about the golden retriever yet, or is that still crocodile Animorphs? That doesn't...
Yeah, they're slicing the stuff too thin, but that's fine. We're reading the book.
Yeah, I think it's mainly just to see which market is the more lucrative. And when you hit these lucrative markets of, potentially being able to market a book to, every single school age kid in the country, for the world, for the next 3 decades, maybe even longer, you start to maybe take some risks. And we've found some very interesting things out about this book. Our listeners have found them and written in about them. I'm gonna just say scandalous.
Oh,
potentially
my gosh.
Scandalous. Yes,
We've had a few scandals here at 372 pages. This will be exciting.
It's very exciting.
I do not know what it is. I have no idea. So I'm
keeping it a secret, and I will just tease it. I'll say potentially sussy-esque. I will say. I don't want to build it up too much.
Almost had a live spit take. Almost had one, but just got away with it.
Sussy.
Wow.
Author of the Cozy Christmas Mystery we read a couple months ago, but we'll get to those. They wrote in emails. Our fans have done a lot of research. It's very exciting stuff, but we'll just tease that. So stick around till we get to the emails, and we'll be sure to delve into this. Cause
does it affect our reading today? Should we be concerned, or do we just march ahead and then we reveal?
I don't think it will affect the reading because it just adds layers to the puzzle.
Okay, good.
So
I'm excited. All right.
But we are reading today the penultimate section of Bridge to Bat City. It's a shorter book, but we've taken our time at it because you don't want a mainline Cline. You want to dole it out bits and pieces along the way. Otherwise, you just might have too many interesting facts about Austin and its residents to learn as you go.
Yeah, especially since we're getting to the section where I'm trying to think of, shows that were on their last legs that had celebrities show up, and it would be like, look who knocked at our door today, Felix. It's the star of
Riptide,
the Hollywood Squares. Here he is.
Joyce DeWitt.
What are you doing here? I knocked on the wrong door. Well, come on in. That's what this section is. Just like, look who it is now, and then golf applause and one after the other.
It really gets to become like regional Gump and Co. in this.
It is so Gump and Co. I have that
section.
Note. Yes.
Totally. Which we were like. We thought like the Ernest Cline himself might show up, and I guess the door's still open for that. But it's I don't know if it's better or worse than that happening. It's with the level of people that we get introduced to, and just sort of facts we get introduced to. One of them right off the bat in this first chapter.
I mean, I hope it happens. That would be... we just shut down the podcast. Just the big switch. Goodbye, everyone. Ernest Cline showed up in his own book.
A slam poet walked by as they booted up Megazone or whatever it was and said, "Hey, what does that say on your Atari screen? Ready Player One. Interesting."
The end.
Yeah.
All right.
But
let's get into it.
We can't theorize about what might happen because we have a lot that actually does happen. And so far, we've had a 13-year-old girl, Opal B. Flats. Her mother dies. She gets beamed, perhaps probed by a UFO, and then her uncle moves her to Austin along with an entire colony of bats. Several of them are music-obsessed bats, and they take up residence under the big bridge in Austin, and are, despite the efforts of a local councilman, Macarno, who wants to drive them out because he's evil, and our hero, Opal, and her uncle Roscoe are, sort of gradually making an effort to save them. The time of this is very unclear at this point in time because a lot keeps happening, but the bats are still sort of always on the verge of being evicted.
And you think uncle, I was trying to think, like, my uncle I grew up with, he was from Southern Illinois, one of my uncles, and he had a big mustache, and he kind of had a Southern drawl and everything, so very Sam Elliott, and he was a carpenter, so he was just like a lanky dude, always working and everything. This is not that uncle. This is a computer-obsessed 23-year-old college dropout who ruined
failed farmer,
ruined his family farm, owes the government thousands and thousands of dollars, and is on the run, fleeing from, presumably should be fleeing from the law, civil courts, certainly, probably felony, probably bench warrants on him.
Yeah. It's Uncle Marcus now. Like, no more Uncle Roscoe. That won't work. Like,
so anyway, that's the uncle. Those are the two main characters that we have so far.
Yes, and he always has a cowboy hat with a circuit board glued to it.
On it.
So that sort of was mentioned once. It comes up again, but that's an important thing to keep in mind. He's colorful, so he fits in well in the colorful town of Austin.
So the little girl is talking to the bats. The bats are their friends. The bats create mojo so that people can groove. Is that how it works?
Yes, mojo facilitates the grooving, and then it sort of Ouroboros itself. The more you groove, the more you mojo.
Yes, and the bats sort of beam the mojo to the performers, the Austin performers, because everyone's coming to Austin. Even if you're from California, known to be from California or whatever, you come to Austin, you play, and you're an Austinite. And the bats come and beam their mojo at you, so you groove more.
Yeah, I forget whether the bats are the only ones providing the mojo, or whether it is some sort of like, an aura where everyone has it, but the bats just amplify it.
Yeah, somehow I think they amplify it. Yeah,
we did. That was in my summary. I neglected to mention that she can telepathically communicate by bats.
But you knew that when you heard that she was beamed up into a UFO and probed for a So you
what
sort
else
of knew.
What else would be the result?
That's what they do. Yes.
Yeah. It's either you become Akira and body horror, telekinesis, or you talk to bats and they're cute. They chitter happily.
Yes. So here we go.
Yeah, this chapter was, what is it, 16, making friends at the Friends. Mm-hmm. This started off, you don't want to, you want to give it a chance every time, but it starts off and it just annoys you right off the bat because it has this sentence that this is how the chapter starts. The following morning, Uncle Roscoe and Opal rambled up to a neighborhood bordering the Drag on the west side of the UT campus to look for a few houses to rent in the area. This is the first mention of the Drag, and it goes on for a couple more sentences in that paragraph, explaining, basic sort of real estate facts. And then it says, they move on, they found a cozy little house for rent just a few blocks from the Drag, which was the local nickname for Guadalupe Street. And that's just
my first, why are you so Klein? Why?
It's like, the appropriate time to explain something is the second time you introduce it. That's just it's good storytelling.
Does he think that we're hanging on what is the Drag? What could that be? Just tell us just the first time. When he does it the second time, yes, it's just incredibly annoying.
Especially because drag is a well-known synonym for the main area. The main drag is well-known. Sure, we know what that means, even if you don't explain it.
The Drag. But real big slam right away on their on I think the tree. Here it is. I'll read it. Okay. It was a tiny blue 2-bedroom cottage with hardwood floors and push-button light switches in a tiny little backyard with a big old Texas live oak tree that made it nice and shady. not a big old beautiful.
Wow.
What a
true,
slam.
Yeah. Wow.
So pretty ugly oak tree, but it was big, but it was pretty ugly.
At least I'm alive for you. Like, what more do you want? Like,
Yes.
I think a listener wrote in to object to that, being like, so there's just dead trees in all of these other yards on this street?
Yes.
Well, then we get our first sort of Gump and TX, I think, instead of Gump and Co. If Gump and Co. stands for Gump in Colorado, we have Gump in Texas. It says, when they finished unpacking, they rambled over to a brand new grocery store called Whole Foods that had just opened up. So that's just, it's a fact. I mean, we now know, we learned that Whole Foods was a Austin store that made good and opened up all across the country and got purchased by Amazon. Does that change anything? Does that make you happy? I don't think either of those are true. But
Does Whole Foods, an Amazon company, need a shout out by this guy? Like, hey, because other things that come up later make you go like, oh, well, that didn't fare quite as well as as Whole Foods. Why do you need to shout that out?
It would be awesome if you started to notice these type of things in books, being like, you want to play ball on Amazon, you want the algorithm to pick you up, quote, like you better mention some subsidiaries here. Audible, a company that was started in someone's garage, had just started. But this is just sort of like anyone could do this. You can mention things that like, in any city. It doesn't give any sort of character that like a successful business started there. Like if you were doing it in DC, you'd be like, hey, he noticed a blonde woman and she said, hi, I'm Crystal Coons. I'm going to start a car dealership and make myself the face of it. But I don't think it'll probably ever work out. Like, well, see you later. Like, but then it did. It worked out for her and she put ads all over the north of Virginia.
Yeah, like if who's happier for this? I was thinking of what if I did it and I just wrote in like Earl's Cheese Puffs. He drove by Shakopee, Minnesota and saw Earl's Cheese Puffs. Oh boy, those cheese puffs look good, he thought. Everyone's going to go like, who gives a rat's ass? Like,
right.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Make them even more regional and just make you question whether there's something that you are is even a real product. Like,
but Whole Foods, oh, how lame. Anyway.
Sure, yep. So then they visit a restaurant called Les Amis. You're the French speaker.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Les Amis.
Enough.
It's French. It means the friends.
Sure. Did you, by the way, when you saw the title, did you... Joey, Rachel.
Wow, we should dance in a fountain. Nah, that'll never work. But they go in, they try it often, and they say Uncle Roscoe, I think he hasn't started his job yet, but the in debt, the now single parent,
yes.
Starting I presume, menial job since he just got hired. If we like the food, we can eat here all the time. Despite eating out being the first thing you should strip from any sort of limited budget. But he's, I think they did emphasize that Austin had many cheap restaurants, so maybe it's cheaper than eating at home. Who knows?
I had the same note. Like, this is the guy who owes thousands in back taxes, just throwing around the money. Like, oh, okay. That in Discovery, they can go to, they'll get that in
Bank
court and be
statements?
like, yeah, he was going in there all the time, just eating, have it, it's on me, whatever you want, please.
Right. Yeah, trying to tip big to impress the hot waitress he meets, which we learned. Yeah.
Tacos for everyone. I was thinking about this because back when I was kind of just freelancing and I would go and I'd have to eat lunch every day and then eventually Tupperware containers bringing because it's like $30 a day, and I would look at this packed restaurant and go, "What are we, millionaires? How do you afford to eat out every single day? Like, good Lord, that's like a third of my income."
Right? Yeah, especially she's 13. A lot of children's menus stop probably at 12, so she's got to order off the big dog menu. That's man, what a fool. Well, he's not good with money.
No, he's not.
And just speaking of the target audience, this is something that came up a couple times. So it says, it turned out to be a perfect spot for people watching. 11-year-olds out there, are you fans of people watching? Do you enjoy?
They love it.
Just
Look at this character. Like, you're 11. You don't know who's a character or not.
Right, just face down, like eating quietly, waiting so you can go home and talk to your friends. Like,
sullenly, like, yeah, I guess I'll eat here if I have to.
The people watching involves an endless parade of the wildest and weirdest and most welcoming-looking folks. So which one of those three is it? Are they wild and weird, or are they welcoming-looking? Because it just sort of seems to immediately contradict like what you might expect there.
Yeah, when I used to, I had a job as a janitor. People always like to hear how many jobs I had.
They do.
I was a night janitor, and I had a bus stop was downtown Minneapolis at a time when it wasn't really that good. But there were these, it was a green uniform we all had to wear, and it made you invisible because you're just a janitor. Mm-hmm. So I'd stand at this bus stop, and like the most insane people, pushing doll heads around in a cart and screaming about, the Old Testament at you would just like walk by me and go like, oh, I'm not interested in him. Sure. He's just a janitor.
Fellow traveler, yes.
So I got to see just like the best part of like, just shrieking lunatics. So I assumed that that's what she was like. Oh, but that guy pushing the doll head cart, he looks so welcoming too.
Sure. Yeah.
As he's screaming verses from Isaiah in my face.
But yeah, you can have one or the other. It could be a guy with a bunch of gold chains on and like booty shorts, or it could be a welcoming folk who sort of just makes you feel like at ease, and she gives you a big handshake and a warm smile.
Yeah, puts an apple on your table. Enjoy. No, it's on me. Oh, how welcoming. Little weird.
And then this is another thing that is just seemed inevitable at the time, but the amount of bats that were introduced in the clothesline crew, or I think a dozen of them, and they all got names and they all got the attributes and stuff. That's pretty much out the window. It's now just Lavaca and Brazos. Like they're the two that everything hinges on here. After it says just a few minutes later, Lavaca and Brazos did show up, both suddenly appearing out of nowhere. So.
Yes, suddenly.
Probably the only way that you could really appear out of nowhere, I think.
I did notice that and was like, am I supposed to be keeping track of, that this is the Spice Girl who's, sporty. This is the one who's with the bats. And it's like, no, I don't think I'm going to, I'm not going to pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think they were just the ones who were sort of at butting heads, but one of them always flew the opposite way, which doesn't seem to really be a thing anymore.
Yes. But here's the appearance of the waitress, because this is a big thing. And it reminded me of, I used to go to, I had a friend who I knew in stand-up comedy, and he was so awkward around people. Think of Michael from The Office, only like way, way more awkward.
Wow, without the charisma.
The waitress would come up and he would do the stuff like, we're going to be married and stuff like that. And I would just go like, how do I convey that I am not with this guy? Anyway, this is reminded me because here's Uncle Roscoe. She looked like she was quite a bit older than Uncle Roscoe. She looked like it. She may not have been. We don't know. The author does not make that clear. But that didn't seem to matter to him. He was smitten with Maria from the moment he looked up from his menu and saw her for the first time. His jaw went slack. His eyes glazed over, his pupils practically turned into two little hearts. Opal had never seen her uncle like this before, and she found it hilarious and adorable. I find it, creepy and
awful.
Uncle Roscoe, slack-jawed and,
bagging himself on the head with his shoe,
Roscoe, get a hold of yourself, man.
Auga. Yeah, I mean, we've had cartoon wolves on here before, but this is, the first time we've had it described as the two hearts, bulging out of his thing.
Yes.
Especially with the 13-year-old there. Get your act together.
Maria, the who's quite a bit old. Well, sorry, she appears like she could be.
Yeah, which, usually isn't said in a way that's complimentary.
Yes.
Maria, you look really tired.
Yeah. You okay? Did you get sleep, Maria? Yeah.
But she does not seem perturbed by this at all. In fact, she's charmed. She's also charmed by the two bats who she sees. She looked a little surprised, but not the least bit frightened. She seemed genuinely delighted by them. And that's because the bats have like flown around, and I guess this table side, al fresco dining was just infested by mosquitoes and black flies, and the bugs just ate them all. So making this health hazard for restaurants. Well, moving it from one health hazard to just another one, I suppose.
Well, also it was a bad restaurant because they had opened the outside, even though there was a scourge of insects out there. But then she apologized because she took so long to get out there, because it's like, oh, we didn't know there was anyone out there.
Right. Yeah.
Like, well, that's on you, man. You opened up the thing. I'm here. What are you talking about?
Sorry, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, as you can probably tell by the bags under my eyes. Yes. I just look so much older than you. It's
so she's charmed by it, but also, okay, here's Roscoe again. But when she was done, Uncle Roscoe was so hypnotized by her beauty that he forgot to let go of her hand until Opal kicked him in the shins a few times under the table to snap him out of it. Get a hold of yourself, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? A kick to the shin, I mean, one of them is awful. Probably the most horrible thing that anyone could do to you. Once my boys got excited when they were little. We were like wrestling or something, and my son spit in my face.
Second almost spit take.
Just like a sort of I'm so revved up. And I was like, that's the worst thing you can do. Don't ever, I had to, like, teachable moment, right?
Yeah.
Kicking someone in the shins is like second to spitting in their face. And she had to do it a couple times?
Right. So
what is happening to him?
The hand just getting clammier and clammier, like
kick.
But she's charmed. She replies and grins that she didn't mind at all. So, I mean, they just sort of grin at each other like a couple of goofballs, which is, the cousin to a goofy grin, I suppose.
Right. But I didn't get the sense from the original description of Maria. She seems like just a normal, sweet person. I don't know. They didn't say, like, her beauty was so... But he was so enchanted by her beauty. Like, he was like the cartoon dog drifting on smoke. Like, oh, my God, I can't believe that this angel from heaven has ascended. Like, I didn't get that impression that she was... like angelic, but
whatever. Well, or like Selma Hayek in From Dusk Till Dawn or something like that. Just like there's no there, and it was too bad because it would be great to see what Ernest Cline's depiction of what that might be. But I mean, I guess he would probably do what I just did, is just describe it being directly as something from a movie.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
So I think it says that they keep coming back, I guess, or like maybe more people come back there, but. Opal keeps asking Maria a bunch of personal questions every time she came back to their table to try to help her uncle out a little. That's how they learned she was taking a few art classes at UT and that she was also a single mom. And it would be amazing if Uncle Roscoe immediately was just like stone faced, being like, ooh, don't want any baggage. Like, you're a single father. Like,
gotta get going, man. Got some computers I need to spread over my floor.
But it doesn't appear to be the case. They're happy about it. But here is when more things start to get weird, because Maria's daughter Elena shows up and holds a leash, and there appeared to be a giant armored alien rat at the other end of it, which is, of course, their pet armadillo. So these people are some of the weirdest and wildest you've ever seen in Austin, the weird town, and their weird pets.
So welcoming, though, when they bring their armadillo on a leash. And then she looked at it, and I think she finally realizes she'd never seen one this big before, or this ugly. Like, what? Are you walking around seeing very attractive armadillos the rest of your life? And then this one is like, I'm really into armadillos, but this one, what's going on with that?
Constant arousal that is now just like in the bucket by the armadillo. Every other armadillo has been, batting its eyelashes and stuff.
Hello, I'm an armadillo. No, I know, I can see that. Ooh, but you, mellow,
And no psychic connection here either. So it was only for the bats that the UFO provided her with. It wasn't every creature who's been given a bad rap by society who's sort of looked down on.
Yeah. We get a drawing of Mello, by the way.
Looks like an armadillo to me.
It looks like an armadillo. I can't tell that it's uglier than other armadillos, but I don't know. I'm not an armadillo. I don't want to judge.
So at some point in time, they become fast friends. They draw together too. They explain to them about the bats and that they're living in the Congress Avenue Bridge. And this was when Maria noticed the circuit board affixed to the front of Roscoe's cowboy hat and complimented him on it. And she says, "I love your hat. It makes you look like a computer cowboy." "Thank you," he replied, blushing. I'm really into computers." And then they fall silent and start fidgeting again. But do you think that she was also fidgeting to say something that nonsensical and pointless? A computer cowboy?
Also, how many successful relationships start with someone going, I'm really into computers? I mean, it's possible. But then, and look, I'm all, this is fiction, whatever. But this is beyond the pale for me. I can't accept this. Uncle Roscoe's eyes lit up. It was like she just flipped a giant switch on his back. His nervousness instantly vanished and began talking a mile a minute, telling her about all the different home computers that were available and what each of them could do. Maria was genuinely interested in what he was saying. I don't think so. Stretching credulity here. I do not believe that.
Of course, yes. Explaining the difference between a Commodore 64 and an Amiga, like... Please.
And her going like, tell me more. No, I can't.
Both elbows on the table, hands under her chin. Like,
you're so funny.
That is so computer cowboy. And then all the other customers inside have flocked outside because there's no bugs there anymore. And it says they ended up enjoying the dinner so much they all left huge tips for Maria and the other waitresses working there that day. So the removal of pestilence from the restaurant made them so happy and generous, as opposed to just raising the bar to what you'd normally expect at a restaurant. But hey, it's a childish book. We can expect childish things to happen.
The health inspector came by, and the big D that's in the window, he took it off and put the C in, and ding.
Yeah, like removing the help wanted sign,
fewer black flies, huh?
Wow. The drain in the bathroom is still clogged with feces. However, the bats have helped this happen. So
the window cleaner is next to the barbecue sauce, so I can't go higher than that. But good on you.
It turns out Elena has lost her father to cancer a few years earlier, so his way of developing characters remains constant for children. They're more dead parents than a Disney movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this. This is all still one scene of them meeting at this restaurant, but it says, you might have a hard time convincing the residents of Austin to accept these bats living under the bridge. Why do you say that? Opal asked, frowning involuntarily. I think she felt a frown coming up.
She felt it, yes.
Because of their name, Elena replied. They're Mexican free-tailed bats, right? She smiled and exaggerated her Texas accent. This is in a Texas accent. I'm not really... Do y'all think all the nice folks who live and work around that bridge want a bunch of homeless Mexicans moving into their neighborhood, human bat or otherwise? I'm afraid not. It doesn't make much sense to have said that in a Texas accent because she's... But, so are people weird here or are they racist? Make up your mind because, like you just said, they've elected Councilman McCarano as well, who seems to be, and he's required to be evil by terms of his employment, so...
They've said the people were everyone's the same when you go to a town, everyone's a piece of garbage. So which is it? But yeah, that one was that was the British Office. Not racist, right? But did you when Maria said her name? Did you do the eye roll? I did. I felt an eye roll coming over me.
Yeah, it's coming up. Oh God, yeah.
Is that coming up? Okay.
Yes,
yeah, I couldn't remember. Yeah.
Please, go right ahead. This is
I mean, what did we decide is mid-grade or whatever? Like, are you 8 years old, 9 when you're reading this book?
Yeah,
I
8 to
don't know.
10. Like,
You're
yeah.
still going like, oh, you're swearing under your breath and chucking the book. Your last name is Music, he said? You're Maria Music? Stop it. Just stop it. Stop it. So bad.
It's I don't know, maybe her husband who died was Lorenzo Music, the voice of Garfield.
Oh yeah,
that's a real name. I assume that's his real name, but he explains why he's taking note of that, and it's a weird coincidence because I love music. And it's like, you're Maria Food. I love food. Like, I love all genres of music. That's my thing. It's a personality trait of mine.
Like I said, I knew a person who said her favorite food was pie. It's like, you can't. That's not. You are not allowed to say that. You either have to narrow it. I would just change it, but if you do, just narrow it.
But so that makes even less sense because Elena says, I was born in Texas, so is my mama. Do you think that stops some people from calling us Mexicans or beaners? You know what beaners are? 9-year-olds reading along? Or even worse names? And it's like, but so do they do that when you just hear your name is Elena? Because like music doesn't, your name is not Elena Musica. Like, so
right.
that seemed interesting. But then she says, I'm sorry, people who say stuff like that are idiots. Does that happen a lot? It used to. But it happens a lot less now that we live in Austin. Most folks around here are pretty open-minded. So what the hell is the problem with the thinking that the bats are Mexican and being racist about it that you just mentioned? Figure it out. Figure it out, man.
It is a math problem that you can't solve. Like, everyone is a racist, calling people slurs and everything, and hating bats because they're unhygienic, which they are. But anyway. But they're open-minded and wonderful and welcoming.
Yeah, they give their they have treats out for the armadillo when you walk by, and they're happy to support your donate to your artisanal dog food bakery or whatever.
So they're whatever I guess you want them to be at the same time. So in the same sentence, like, boy, these racists sure are welcoming. Like, wait, what?
That's just, these off-screen racists are terrible. Will we ever see them? No. However, they are there lurking.
Yes.
Their presence is very prominent in the town which we love. What else did they do? Well, we won't get into that because it must be really horrible. But, brother. But then the way the chapter ends after all of that, they're so excited. Uncle Roscoe's horny. She's made a good friend. They met an armadillo. Opal and Roscoe became regulars at Les Amis. Sometimes they stopped by there several times a day to eat or to see Maria Elena. So the child support budget non-existent. The food was good, and the company and the people watching were even better. Did he give an example of the people watching, even though he mentioned it multiple times? He did not.
That would require some sort of effort or writing. But
think about how easy it would have been to do, Like, he clearly remembers people from back in the day. Like, you can come up with them, off the top of your head. Like, the guy who wheels around rabbits in a wagon, or the guy who, sticks the Texas flag on a pinwheel and puts it everywhere. Like, it's just...
Well, like you said, the booty shorts and roller skate guy, with no shirt, spinning around and with a boombox on. It's like, yeah, all right.
Mickey Mouse mascot head guy. He had stolen a Mickey Mouse mascot head from Disneyland and walked around with it everywhere. So,
first person dancing with horse mask on, like what? But the bats patrol it and eat all the bugs. And the people don't question that. And first of all, I want to write a book that's from the bug's point of view, and like, oh God, the evil bats are back. And then there's one bug who survives, and it's like, I'm going to tell everyone how awful they are.
Right.
They just fly around eating you.
Life was so good for so many years. Yes. Oh, and then the bats are only able to do this because, remember, they flipped their schedule so they wouldn't be distracted by the music at night. So like that, which is ceased to be mentioned. In fact, they go to many concerts upcoming in the daytime. So
yes.
It's like, but yeah, the anthropomorphism does stop at some level,
yes.
which is I don't know. Maybe once A Bug's Life came out, they would be, or Ants, they would have been a bit more sympathetic to their insect friends.
Oh, we have I forgot, there's a drawing of, there's a lot of musical notes drawn in, but then there's a drawing of Les Amis. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
And the bats are flying under like a tarp where you're sitting.
They're nesting directly above one of the tables, it appears.
Which I think we're going to downgrade that thing to a D again on the, I don't think that's hygienic.
Yeah, hey,
in terms of guano and stuff.
You're allowed a couple of flies or mosquitoes, but this is a mammal nesting in your thing is not an acceptable thing for a restaurant.
When I worked I worked nights at a cheese factory. Sorry, everyone. And it was we would brine the cheese, so they were in these big like salt brine, like huge vats. And it wasn't completely airtight, and so bugs would get in there, and we would just go in and skim the bugs off the top of the... and there would be like a pool skimmer of just like filled with the bugs. Like, people don't know that salt kills it all anyway. Who cares?
Sure. Wow.
So, little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you know how any of that stuff works, I mean, what's the allowable parts per million of bat guano in your McDonald's French fries? Like,
I had a friend, my roommate was a food science major, and so I'd say like, bugs on the top of he's like, allowable parts per million, you're fine. Okay.
Well, that's Les Amis policy, and we got a nice little illustration of it that we will come back to later.
Yeah.
I think that's how the chapter ends. Every time they flew away, Maria would always wave goodbye to them and shout, "Please come back soon, little bat friends." And that's my first question, sort of like, what's the time frame here? Because in the last chapter, they talked, Macarena was like, we're going in with flamethrowers to eradicate them. And you'd think you might, sort of take initiative with that sooner than later. But there's a sort of this amorphous period of time where they have been issued a license to go and rally support for them.
Yes.
That's how that chapter ends. And chapter 17 is Making Austin Weirder.
Did they originate that? Or is Portland has the same, right?
Yeah, well, we have an email about it. You want to want to hear it?
Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil it, but if you want to hear it, let's
probably
do it.
worth bringing up. But here we go. So this is, I feel like a nationally known thing. You've heard that. I don't know if they started it, but I think we determined that this was 1984 is when the bats moved in.
Okay. I couldn't remember. Yeah, I was thinking a little later, but
yeah, a lot of other signifiers point to that, but it's definitely the mid 80s because they're still playing Atari, etc. Mm-hmm. Brian R. wrote in, not that I would expect Klein to do 2 seconds of research, but in the last reading, Roscoe bought a Keep Austin Weird sticker in the early 80s, and he links to a article from KXAN, an Austin news station. You've seen it on bumper cars and T-shirts, and maybe even mentioned out loud, but how did the slogan Keep Austin Weird come to be? The phrase dates back to Red Wasenick, an Austin Community College librarian who mentioned the phrase back in 2000 while calling in donation to KOOP Radio. The weekly lounge show, hosted since its inception by Jay Robillard, would play offbeat music, the inspiration behind Wasenick's contributions. Whoever answered the phone said, "Why do you support the show?" Wasenick said during his New York Times interview. I said, "I don't know. It helps keep Austin weird." So it was a tossed-off radio call-in slogan from the year 2000. So a little bit of artistic license.
That's off by quite a bit. I don't think you can. If you want to fudge a few years, I'm not going to fact check everything, but that one's pretty bad.
Right. And I think someone else pointed out that Whole Foods opened in 1980 or something like that. So it's just sort of, the greater Austin experience is condensed into a magical realism. I think that's what we can pass this off
Okay.
as.
Is that that's the get out of jail free card? Magical realism.
But he's they're going to make Austin weirder in this one. Uncle Roscoe starts his part-time job at the newspaper. I didn't realize it was part-time, so that's even more off-putting about his free spending at the restaurant. But then he also starts working part-time at 2 different Radio Shacks on opposite... It says this in your copy too, right? 2 different Radio Shacks on opposite sides of town.
Correct, it does in my copy, yes.
You hate to be pedantic about it, but this,
He deserves it. He's earned it.
A published book.
Yes.
A word count in the 50,000, like 51,000. There wasn't a lot of words. You can fix the unnecessary plurals.
Well, his wife edited it and wrote the reviews.
Amazon review. Sure.
So whatever. Yes. So Whole Foods, Radio Shack didn't have quite the same path to.
Correct.
Sure, at one point there were a lot of Radio Shacks, but didn't, the Amazon's not going like, yeah, that seems like a good bet.
Yeah, we'll buy the name so we can put it on a T-shirt maybe, so people could wear it ironically, but that's about it.
I went in with a friend once to a Radio Shack, and he just had to get, just apart, like really quickly. And he walked up and set it on the counter, and the person said, phone number? And he goes, I'm not giving you my phone number. I don't want your 7-foot thing. You're not going to send me your catalogs. I just want to buy the damn piece of. And the person was like, hey. It's like, I've been in here before. I don't want your super long thing.
Super long receipt? Is that what
the receipt. Yeah. And also, like, don't put my name in the thing. I'm not in there. I'm not going to take your catalog. He just went on, and I'll just, like, rage at this guy, and the guy was just like, okay, that'll be 75 cents.
75 cents. Wow. By the time I was going in, when you needed a cable in an emergency, it was like $20, and it would be like gold plated.
Oh yeah. Well, you gotta have
cable.
This one. Now, I would not use this piece of garbage. Like, why do you sell that then? Get it out of here.
Kramer mentioned, as one of life's mysteries, why do they ask for your phone number at Radio Shack on a Seinfeld episode?
Wow.
So it was but so Uncle Roscoe says, like, because Opal's going to get a job, so she can probably afford, to eat out the 5th time a week at Les Amis.
Yeah.
But he says, you've already got a job. It's your job to help bats. The bats fit in here as quickly as possible so they don't end up facing eviction or death. And it says, they've already been considered regulars at Les Amis. So, like, maybe just a flamethrower was hard to obtain for McCarno. Like, he's on a waiting list for them. I'm not sure. But
it's, government stuff. So the flamethrower is like $3 million or whatever. So he has to commission that. And
he's self-dealing. I'm sure he's trying to get a limestone contract attached to the bill or something.
Exactly. He's trying to lard up that bill.
McCarno pork, baby.
Yes.
This next part is another pet peeve of mine, and I've seen it in one other book, but it says Uncle Roscoe gave Opal her own key to the house, told her she was free to go anywhere within a 5-mile radius as long as she left a note or called him to tell where she was going, and she was always home before it got dark. This wasn't all that unusual for kids her age back then. So Klein is imagining the 9-year-old reading, being like, what? Like. And I read another book last year, or listened to an audiobook that was the one I've mentioned on here before. I did not care for it. It was widely praised, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It was about a video game designer and stuff. But this author would do things, and I have to assume an editor was like, put this in there because your readers are morons. But was like, she would say things like, a character's trying to get in touch with another character and being like, remember, this was the late 90s, and people weren't carrying cell phones with them everywhere they go. And it's like, when would you stop giving people this type of, assist, this leg up here? Like, if this was taking place in the Civil War, would you have to remind them? Like, is the drool string just going to be hitting the ground as they try to comprehend that cell phones didn't always exist? Like, the slightest bit of credit that they're able to piece these words together by reading a book. Like, come on, people.
Yeah, I'm reading Dickens, Oliver. Like, why doesn't he just call home? And
how come Oliver's not on TikTok? Like,
why doesn't he go to the British Health Services? What is happening?
So this is the only one of these I think in this book, but it is just sort of off-putting. We've already accepted that they're playing Atari, which, if you're unable to comprehend this fact, you've never heard of. So I don't know. Back then, they didn't have PlayStation 5; they only had Atari. Like, all right.
That is very annoying. But she begins the slogan, "The bats belong beneath the bridge."
Yes.
Which she prints off these flyers from Uncle Roscoe's computers. Mm-hmm. So she prints them off the computers, whatever. But then it takes pains to say a dot matrix printer. And I had a dot matrix printer that was hooked to my Mac back in the day. and we lived in an apartment, and it was on this like wooden thing, and I would have to print off scripts, and it would go for like hours. We'd come back, and we would get noise complaints from the neighbors, like something's knocking up against the wall.
Wow.
And the cabinet would like slam against the wall. I was like, okay, I gotta find a place to like put it on like a mattress and cover it up.
Wow.
Yeah, they were not good.
We had one for sure. It was, I mean, it's ingrained in my mind. I bet there's someone who's made a 10-hour video of YouTube of dot matrix sound, dot matrix beats to study
ASMR. Yes.
And you could do stuff. Yeah, I had a little you could fold the tear offs into a fun little accordion kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But so are the kids who are drooling over the fact that she's able to go out without telling an adult? It doesn't clarify what a dot matrix printer is for them.
Oh, that's true. You're 8 years old going.
They're just sitting there being like a dot matrix printer.
Yeah, they're in one of those YouTube videos. Like a 9-year-old sees a dot matrix for the first time.
The 9-year-old just takes out a gun and blows their own head off. They're unable to comprehend a world. It's like seeing a Lovecraftian beast.
Do I hoverboard on it?
We got to start doing those for the podcast. We got to start being, episode 4 of Bridge to Bad City.
What?
Great. And then she says they printed out the flyers. They go up and she draws the bats on them, and then they go and hang them around town. And then it breaks up the third person narrative of the book just for a listicle.
And here we go. The first one I didn't look up. Erilyn Hughes?
Yep.
Austin's Queen of the Weird? I just trusted that this was correct and was too annoyed. She drives around town in a pink Oldsmobile covered in pig figurines called the Pigmobile, with her pet pig, era riding shotgun. That sounds pretty weird, man. Whoa!
That's a good one, though. I mean, I assume that is just like a local flavor who didn't go on to, being nationally famous or rich type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my inclination is to go, what's your job? What do you work? Can you put the pig back in the thing and get a job? But
yeah, puts the pig away, scrubs up, and goes into the burn ward as a surgeon.
Yes, exactly. But then the next one is quite interesting. Do you want to cover this chap?
Well, I recognize this. Richard Garriott, a local Austin video game designer who sometimes dresses up in medieval garb and goes by the alias Lord British, who I believe this is the guy that created the Ultima series of video games, which, they went on to be pretty famous online. I think there was a famous in online lore moment where Lord British forgot to turn off his invulnerability power, and some idiot just came in and killed him. So that was that's a deeply meaningful moment for some people. But he lives outside of town in a mansion filled with secret rooms and passages. And every Halloween he turns it into a haunted house and invites the whole town over to explore it. And you found an interesting fact about Richard Garriott.
Yes, Garriott was the inspiration for the character James Halliday in Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. And remember him in the movie, played by that guy who's
Mark Rylance, I believe.
Who's actually a pretty good actor, but he played that guy. That was one of the most annoying, aside from who played the Voltari in...
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen. Who seems like a great guy. I'm
also
sure I'd love to hang out with him. I'm sure he's funny as heck and a great actor. Same with Ryland. But that thing annoyed the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
I'm
so maybe
game designer who dresses up as Lord British.
Richard Garriott's sitting at home being like, what the damn hell is he making me sound like?
I don't look a thing like that.
And then, of course, you also meet Robert Rodriguez holding a camera, director of, El Mariachi and Spy Kids and Grindhouse and all that. And then another guy, Mark Bloshock. Who is he? Oh, an engineer who helped build the bridge, and so he's excited.
Build the bridge, yeah.
And then it says, Opal liked to draw little one-panel cartoons about the clothesline crew and all the adventures she imagined they were having when they flew out from under the bridge. Do we get an example of that? No, we get another listicle. I would have loved to see what the funny one-panel cartoons she would have been making.
Well, she says, like, trying to get away from various musicians who wanted to kill him so they could... it's about an armadillo named Chirango, musical instruments. It was a really weird comic.
Oh, right. Yeah, Elena's comic. This is
Oh, exactly. Yeah, sorry. Opal liked to draw them. Elena, right. Oh, sorry, we get another... I got ahead of myself. Yes. We get another listicle. I'm sorry.
More amazing musicians who have lived in Austin.
Yes, I jumped ahead of the list of people. I'm sorry.
And they are Janis Joplin, Lucinda Williams.
Joplin? Huh? 8-year-olds? What year did she die? 1970. You were born in 2020.
Yeah.
So, great.
Yeah. I didn't even realize 1970. That's amazing. So even close to a decade and a half for when this book is taking place.
But she was Austinite?
Hey,
I guess. I didn't
lived there. It says she was born in Port Arthur. So
okay, I take it for granted. I don't know. I didn't picture her as, but whatever.
Yeah.
Lucinda Williams.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in Louisiana, but I guess she went to Austin. I'll take that on. And then Sean Colvin, who is, it's like the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I'm sorry. I'm sure she has a wonderful, rich career. I don't know anything about her. She's a one-hit wonder, at least for us who don't live in Austin.
Sunny Came Home, is that
Sunny Came Home, right?
Well, I saw that. I was like, that's a name I recognize. I just at least give him some credit for broadening his horizons from Ready Player One, where I think like not even Madonna made the list of music that so I go and I'm listening to Rush and I listen to Bruce Springsteen. I'd never heard of Madonna. So
is that your Mark Ryland impression?
I guess so. Yeah,
that was good.
Slow growth.
Yes.
But then, yes, it says Elena also drew comics, and she drew one named Chirango, a talking armadillo who was always running around Austin trying to get away from various musicians who wanted to kill him so they could use the shell on his back to make a rare lute-like musical instrument called a chirango that would bring them fame and fortune. Can we get more of that as opposed to whatever else you're about to hit us with here? That sounds far more interesting.
Yeah, it was a really weird comic. I can't disagree with that. Like the fact that his name is Chirango and then they're going to kill him and make a Chirango with it. That's weird. Maybe a little on the nose, but weird. I like it.
Right, yeah. And then the friend Elena convinces Opal she should be making a zine, which is a very 80s and 90s kind of thing to do. A little photocopied magazine you make yourself, and she decides to make one about the bats. And then they name dropped Kinko's, which was a very fun.
It's also very odd. He's got to be doing this for some sort of cash grab, right?
Like Kinko's isn't even FedEx Kinko's anymore. I think it's FedEx Office. They've phased it out.
Yeah, the Kinko's doesn't exist as a name anywhere. It's just called FedEx Office, but. Did he do the thing where he like pre-sells, like, I'm going to write this book about bats? Like, yeah, I'm not interested. But FedEx Kinko's gets put into the story, like woven right in there. Unfortunately, he blew it with Radio Shack. They're like, sounds good, man.
Everything's bankrupt. Yeah. Well, it does make sense because I think in the next chapter is when either Lavaca or Brazos gives her a HelloFresh code. So that was really the tip-off, I think, that they were pre-selling ad space in this thing.
Elena talks about like a mattress coming in the size of a box the size of a mini fridge. You're like, all right, this is getting a little too...
Right. They went through the whole 100-day trial of that mattress and they still haven't saved the bats? Like, what is the time frame? Come on.
That one was weird to me, the FedEx Kinko's one. But then he explains like why it was called... Kinko's and everything. Again, 8-year-olds? Are they like what? Well, I have been alive. There has not been Kinko's,
right?
So I don't care how Kinko's got started.
Yeah, and nor does anyone have a fondness for that particular retail chain. It was just a place you went, no one was ever happy to be there. You're either like, photocopying, flyers or like printing out college applications. Again, not a place that brought you any pleasure.
Yes. I need 400 copies of this. What kind of paper? I don't know. What do you suggest? I don't know what you want, so I can't suggest anything. It's 3 a.m. Like, I don't know. It's like the most unpleasant place on earth.
Yeah. Your thumb drive's formatted FAT32. This isn't going to work in our machines. You got to format NTFS when you bring it in here. Okay, it's not going to happen. Listen, this
Ron,
is not where I work.
This guy is formatted as...
yeah, you can't do that. You got to format it. That's what he just said. It doesn't help me. It sounds like we're both basing this on specific experiences.
Yes. He's with another customer, and then he comes up and says the same thing. Like, why did I wait for that? Yeah, you got to reformat. There's nothing I can do.
Her zine is called Bat Zine with an exclamation mark, and he lays it out thick. He says Opal was excited because she believed her zine might actually be able to change the public's opinion of her furry little flying friends if she could get enough people to read it. So it's really just sort of spelling it out for any 8-year-olds whose jaw is still on the table from not understanding why she was able to play outside with no adult present.
Right. The 8-year-olds are still, they're like going back to the drawing of Sean Colvin. Like, yeah, that does look a lot like the Sean Colvin I remember.
Right. That's Pride really of Vermilion, South Dakota.
But hang on, let me read about zines. I'm sorry, now I'm back into it. Okay.
I'm only noticing now that under favorite songs, it does not list "Sunny Came Home" as so.
Wow.
Opal is into the deep cuts here.
Okay.
In fact, none of those songs listed are among her top played songs on Spotify. So, Sean Colvin deep cuts, 9-year-olds? Who's in? But how about this one? Speaking of deep cuts, luckily one of the Les Amis customers they gave a copy to was a man named Lewis Black, who happened to be the editor and co-founder of the Austin Chronicle. It is not that Lewis Black. It is another one. It is not the one from The Daily Show who yells. It is the actual publisher of a small Austin alt weekly.
So again, the 8-year-old's going like, "Oh wow, Lewis Black, the guy that Grandpa likes." I'm like, no, it's not that one. Oh,
well, yeah, I have no reference for that.
I'm out then. I don't know. But the girls thought the Austin Chronicle cover story would fix everything, and that the public's opinion of the bats would change overnight. But it didn't. And this was a rude awakening for both of them. In the days that followed, negative stories calling for the bats to be eradicated continued to appear in other papers and on the local TV news.
Yeah.
That's not how this book is supposed to work. Everything just kind of falls into line. Like,
somehow the public's opinion changed overnight, instantly.
Yes.
Suddenly. Yeah, sorry. Instantly and suddenly. Yeah. But yeah, so there's still negative press and a campaign going on. Macarno is not taking his foot off the gas. Like, he's out there being like, I've got the flamethrower. I'm ready to go. But
I just have to acquire there's some sort of fuel that you need for it. I have a committee working on that for the flamethrower. It's very complicated, people. But and the public is like, yay, he's going to do it soon because we hate those bats.
Yeah, if these TV stores are happening, the public would be like, you'd have vigilantes, like, I'm going to do it myself. Like, I can't have these, I run a dog breeding operation. I can't have them getting rabies. Like, come on.
But all the weird and welcoming people are like, they're on board. I'm trying to figure out how this is all working. Yeah, in terms of politics.
Yeah, The padlock lady is like, as soon as I manage to take off the 90 padlocks that I skateboard around town wearing every day, I'll be there to help you bats. I've really found myself in a bit of a jam with this persona I've developed for myself. It's very heavy and very hard to take off.
I've got to tie tennis shoes together and throw them over a tree. But after that, I am with you 100%. And then we're going to go all the way with this thing.
Because it says winning over a few hundred or even a few thousand people wouldn't be enough to save the bats from the forces of certain doom slowly closing in around them. Emphasis highly on slowly. It goes on to say, The people who live in Austin are called Austinites. Thank you. And then it says Lavaca and Brazos and the rest of the Clotheslines crew split up into pairs again. So they just to emphasize that they have all the rest of the Clothesline crew. Koenig and Lamar, I'm sorry, they will not be attending any more hip hop concerts.
But they had very distinct personalities. How do you just get rid of those people?
You take them away, yeah.
It's like suddenly you watch the Monkees and there's just 3 monkeys and you're like, what happened to Peter Tork? He's the one who wears the hat or whatever. Like, how can you do this to these bats?
Yeah. The guy in the Burger King's Klitz Club who wears his hat backwards is now not part of it anymore? Oh, did he get his own spin-off? Like,
yeah, what has happened? No explanation? It's like when you watch a soap opera and they just go, the voice comes in at the beginning. This is a truth that has happened all the time. The part of Ron will now be played by, and then like a guy just comes in, he's like a mustache or something. Hello.
Hey, Ron.
Hi, Ron. But the bats don't even get the courtesy of that.
They don't get a send-off, yeah.
No.
All the Koenig and Lamar action figures are going to be in the dollar bin.
Right. But the bats flew out over all the houses and they ate up all the insects that liked to ruin people's gardens and their picnics at the park. Do the insects like to do that?
Yeah, they're evil, like Macareno limestone.
Like, you know what we're going to do next? This is going to really bother the people.
Yeah, go out there and eat that kale. I'm so full, boss. I can't do it anymore. This is what we do, damn it.
They hate it.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it.
You should feel sick because we're evil and we like that.
I just want to breed. No, you can't.
They also says, I guess this is at day or night. I mean, they went to... It doesn't really matter. They were doing it to the greatest soundtrack imaginable, grooving to all the best music being performed by all the best musicians in the world. So I guess this is just the Clothesline crew. There's never really no emphasis on what the other bats are doing because they only come out at nights. So the Clothesline crew is shouldering a great burden. They are sort of getting distended and obese from eating all these bugs.
That's
while all
true,
the other bats
yeah,
sleep.
because they have to like take care of the... So do they have rounds? Like, let's go to... We got to hit Leami... And we got to eat a bunch of black flies. And then we got to go over to the park. And we got to do that.
Oh, yeah. God.
Is there a point where they
bridge.
Do bats have little hands, right? At the end of their wings?
Probably.
Can they just like scoop them up and just like crush them and drop them? I can't eat another black fly.
Yeah.
We have 1 million brothers and sisters. And they're all having pups right now. Can we enlist them? No. Just the Clothesline crew for now. And then we'll figure the rest out later.
Yeah. Does the Clothesline crew have, like you said, members that are like peripheral members, like rap crews always have, being like, come on, we can let, Mick into the Clothesline crew. He's sort of like our, Capadonna in the Wu-Tang Clan. No, he is not an official member yet. Right. He doesn't know the motto and the slogan. But it's pointless to try to make sense of. They did say in the first time they met Maria that she like put out pineapple for them, and it said they were so full that they just like politely like took a bite just to be polite. So right. I do think that they are getting fed up with this.
That was a curious thing for me. I didn't look it up. Do bats like pineapple?
There's like fruit
bats do, right?
But do Mexican long-tailed bats like it? I don't know.
The beaner bats? Sorry. It was in the book.
BBs. Yeah, no sense of that. And but I can't. We have one section left of this book. There's no reason to.
Yeah,
they are pretending that bats don't carry rabies. It's not worth trying to see if it's accurate or not. But this is another thing, like the people watching that he just overlooked. But it says they also began to have occasional run-ins with the city's new team of bat catchers, who were constantly on the lookout for them. There had been a few close calls, but so far the bat catchers hadn't managed to catch a single bat in one of their nets. Oh, wow, that would have been an interesting thing to read about. But, whatever. Would have liked to see like what they looked like, what the bat catchers were doing, how evil they were, whose close call they had it. But
some people just hate everyone and everything, and so you become a bat catcher. That's just the way it works.
But then, unfortunately, that was about to change.
So the bat catchers are going to come on strong in Chapter 18.
Before they come on strong,
Yes.
it is time for one final segment of Real or Fanfic.
All right. I'm ready.
Here is Real or Fanfic, the section of our podcast where our beloved, friendly, weird and wonderful, just like Austinites, Patreon jackals, send in some fanfic to try to fool you, or they send in passages from the final section of Bridge to Bat City, and you try to determine which one is real and which ones are fanfic.
Wow,
Patreon
you did not call them welcoming, so wow.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry. Well,
right.
It can't be one or the other. They just hate Mexican free-tailed bats. It's the one flaw of every single one of our people. We make them check that box when they sign up. But it is at patreon.com/372 pages. It's been speaking of wild, wacky places, you've done another classical mini all about Herman.
I didn't. I just suggested a purchase, but hey, people seem to enjoy it.
It's
Bernard Herrmann. You know him.
Of course.
Of course you do, yeah. And Porter?
They had the Fox sitcom about his head, right? That was classic 80s, early 90s sitcom, Herman said.
Quincy Porter. I mean, where else are you going to get suggestions to buy cheap CDs with Quincy Porter? Come on, people. It's worth its weight in gold.
And we've also done an Encyclopedia Brown mystery that was among the strangest that's ever been read on the podcast, where the case of the dwarf's beard, where...
Yes.
Insanity. I mean, outright insanity in Idaville. So come on over and check those out. We appreciate anyone who supports the podcast. Here we are. These are 5 passages. They could all be fanfic by the listeners or real passages from later in Bridge to Bat City. Number 1. Who are you? Opal asked. The man smiled. Why, I am the cosmic cowboy. I'm not from around these parts, if you know what I mean. He nodded to the clothesline crew. Your friends do. Opal suddenly remembered her experience with the UFO back in Lubbock. Wait, that was you in the UFO? That was it, darling, he said, strumming his guitar softly. But why? Why did you give me the ability to communicate telepathically with the bats? Opal demanded. Well, to tell you the truth, that was a mistake on my part. I'd meant to give that power to Buddy Holly, but because I'd been away, I didn't know he died. I gave them to you because I thought you were him. You're from the same town, you like music a lot, and you look just like him.
It's really, really good, but I have to say that is fanfic.
Okay.
It covers all the bases. The Suddenlies, the Buddy Holly. It's really good.
Number 2. The bridge was creaking and starting to rip in the center. Opal shouted to Lavaca and Brazos, try to create a bat chain underneath the bridge to keep it up until the humans can get here to fix it. So that's what the bats did. They all linked wing to wing and held on as hard as they could. Suddenly, the bridge gave one loud pop, but the crack that had been spreading was stopped in its tracks. Luckily, there were so many bats that they had created multiple bat chains all the way across the underside of the bridge. Somehow, the big old beautiful bridge held up and the bats had saved the day. At least for now.
Okay, I gotta say fanfic again.
Wow. All right. Number 3. My name is Daniel Johnston, he said. I'm a songwriter. I also work as a janitor at McDonald's. Pleased to meet you, Opal replied. My name is Opal, and this is my friend Elena, and that's Mello the Armadillo. She handed him a flyer. We're trying to help the bats fit in here. Wow, really? He studied the flyer for a few seconds, then squinted up at the bright blue sky. I don't see any bats around. Most of them are sleeping right now, Opal told him, under the Congress Avenue Bridge downtown. That's a good spot, Daniel replied, nodding. I slept under that bridge once or twice myself when I first got here. I came to the town with the circus and never left. Daniel took 2 cassette tapes out of his backpack and handed one to each of them. The label had a drawing of a weird-looking frog on it, along with the words, Hi, how are you? This has a bunch of my songs on it, he told them.
Wow. Is he that, he's that kind of weird singer dude?
Yep. He, songs have been covered by a lot of famous people.
Musicians liked him, but he was
Kurt Cobain wore a shirt with him on it. Yeah.
Okay. But he was obviously very eccentric and reclusive, I think.
Yeah. I think your son August met him, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be. I don't know. I'm going to say fanfic.
Okay. Number 4. You're never going to believe it, Opal. Uncle Roscoe excitedly pulled off his clip-on tie and threw it in the trash. I won't need that thing anymore. A big, goofy grin spread across his face, and he handed Opal an envelope marked with a red oval. Inside the oval was a word Opal had never seen before. Nintendo. Opal opened the envelope and began to read the letter. But Uncle Roscoe's excitement was too great, and he started telling her about the Nintendo company and their plans to launch their Famicom, short for Family Computer, entertainment system to the United States next year. They were looking for an American video game to produce, and they loved Uncle Roscoe's bat-themed demo disc. They were offering him a job to develop his game full-time. After Uncle Roscoe calmed down a little, he said to Opal, "Say, Opal, did you ever think of a title?" Opal smiled. "I sure did. Bridge to Bat City." "Bridge to Bat City," Uncle repeated. "Yeah, I like that."
No. Oh, man, I'm tempted to say it's real. This makes me I'm so...
Ill? Does it make you ill?
Yeah, you've messed with my head. I don't know. Just because I have to say something's real, I'll say that's real.
Wow. All right.
Nintendo,
Number 5, last one. "We've had enough of your posturing, Macarno," said a voice from the back. Opal knew it immediately. It was Ann Richards with Molly Irvin trailing behind. "All the money in the world can't stop the power of Austin. The bats belong beneath the bridge," they chanted, walking up to the podium. The entire crowd joined in. Tears welled in Opal's eyes. "Especially not when you have a badass bee like Opal leading us," Ann Richards said, placing her hand on Opal's shoulder. "Badass bee?" Opal asked. Richards stammered. "Bat," Molly interrupted. "Badass bat." They both laughed, and so did Opal, even though she wasn't entirely sure why.
Oh, please say that's not real.
Badass B. B stands for boss, / girl.
Okay. Now I'm conflicted.
Okay.
Can I change my previous answer?
Yeah, it's always on the table.
I want to say my previous one was fanfic, and this one is real.
Nat, you say Nintendo is fanfic. Ann Richards' Badass B is real.
I don't know. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What difference does it make?
Exactly. Well, we'll get some statistics at the end of this, maybe next time.
Good.
We'll see what happens. Number 1, I'm the Cosmic Cowboy. I meant to get Buddy Holly, but I got you. You said fanfic. That was Craig's fanfic.
Okay. Very good. Like I said, it's excellently done. Covered all the bases.
Number 2, the bat chain underneath the bridge, holding the crack in the bridge. You said fanfic for that. That was fanfic. That was written by Henry, an 11-year-old son of one of our listeners. So, unfortunately, none of the intended audience was able to fool you with their fanfic, but I'm sure they both came close.
That was very close, because I'm like, that seems totally on board. Become a writer, man. You can easily outpace this guy.
Yeah, if he needs a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
Number 3, Daniel Johnston. How are you? The tape he gives them. You said fanfic for that. That is real. From the next section we will read. Gump and Co. continues with an introduction from Daniel Johnston.
Daniel Johnston.
I saw a drawing of that T-shirt Kurt Cobain wore later coming up. So that is 2 for 3, correct. Number 4, Nintendo letter from Uncle Roscoe. You said real, then you changed it to fanfic.
I did.
Good call. That was fanfic written by Daniel on the heels of the Daniel Johnston one. So 3 for 4. Number 5, Ann Richards, Molly Irvin, characters we will soon meet. You're a badass bee, Opal. Badass bat, they claim it's called. You said real for that. That is fanfic, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Written by Harris. So 3 for 5. About par for the course.
Devious. Very devious, everyone.
It's a big challenge, yeah. I mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, Ann Richards and, well, they're coming right up.
Yeah, let's get to them. In Chapter 18, Powerful Forces and Furry Little Faces. Let me just read this, just the way it starts. One morning, Opal and Elena decided to ride along with Uncle Roscoe, and he rambled down to his job at the newspaper so they could visit the bats under the bridge next door. Then they planned to walk up to the state capitol building and hand out bat flyers to as many important looking people walking around there as they could. This was Elena's idea. She told Opal it would help them spread their message to a lot of powerful people involved in politics at both the state and local level. Opal thought this was a fantastic idea, blah, 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 loaded up a few copies of Bat Zine for the occasion. Once again, like, what are we working with here? Would it take 2 hours to render that bridge uninhabitable if they decided to go for it? You know, netting or poison or thing? Like, if this was an actual, if people were as panicked as they were, the sensationalist news? I'm just curious, you know.
I'm sure it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, I don't know that the blowtorch idea would be
that one, yeah, might be, yeah, just a little far down the ladder,
but it does seem like a committee could quickly, like, what is bat abatement? And then, you know, like a Quint guy comes in and does the chalkboard thing, like, I'll get those bats for you.
Yeah. And I'll do it remarkably cheap because it's been a big market for this in many urban centers. Yeah,
I've been mostly freelancing. Actually, I work nights at McDonald's. You know, yeah. It's with
that guy Roscoe. I see him at Radio Shack. Yeah, it's. I was sleeping under the bridge for a while, so I might have rabies. I don't know.
I probably do. I've been scratched quite a few times, as you can see.
It says it was mid-morning when they arrived at the bridge, so nearly all the bats were asleep. But, any guesses who woke up when they sensed Opal was near?
Well, let me run through all the bats that I easily have at the top of my...
Lavaca and Brazos. Okay, it was not Koenig and Lamar. It was not the ones that love R&B. It was
okay. All right. But all of them, I assume, are grooving somewhere. Yeah. And sending out mojo. Okay. Yeah.
Or they're just, you know, falling asleep midday from eating so many black flies.
Right. So when you read this, did you, like, stop yourself and go, no, I'm going to guess who this is? Like, the crowd was listening intently to a white-haired lady in a sky blue suit who was standing up at the podium. Opal didn't know who the woman was. Oh, you don't say. But she really liked what she was saying because she was saying that women have been excluded from Texas politics for far too long and not racist, right?
Right.
And they deserved a chance to help to run the government too. So Opal liked that. Did you stop and go like, oh boy?
Yeah.
Or did you just go, all right, let's just get this over with. Who are you talking about?
Yeah, by this time you sort of realized they were going to be real people, but, like, you know, it wasn't going to be Kensington Q girl boss, a character he invented. But
it is, of course, Ann Richards for Texas governor doing her speech. So she was the second woman governor of Texas. I looked it up. There was some sort of qualification in the first one, maybe, but not a figure I was familiar with. But I assume she made some national headlines in the 80s. But it really is just a dumber version of Gump and Co. You know, it really is. Then we ran into this person. Then we Then we ran into the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Hey, what are you doing in Austin? Oh, we really love California, but we came here because it's really cool. You know.
Yeah. A guy named Wiley Wiggins kept touching his face, and they said, hey, you should be an actor. Luckily, Richard Linklater was walking by and decided to cast him as Mitch in his upcoming project, Dazed and Confused. He was trying to swat away the mosquitoes, and then when the bat stopped him, he stopped doing his... Anyway. But it does say... I had this flagged as a dumb sentence, but the people in the crowd really seemed to be enjoying what Ann Richards was saying, but a lot of them were having a hard time paying attention to her speech because of all the mosquitoes buzzing around. It really does sound like it was a hell on earth to live here before the bats came. Like, you couldn't eat outside. You couldn't attend a political rally in the middle of the day.
And during the day. I mean, we have a lot of mosquitoes in Minnesota, mostly in the evening.
Sundown, essentially.
Day is not really a problem. if you're on a golf course next to a lake, maybe, and you, like, walk through a bush. But Opal kept hearing loud slapping sounds throughout the crowd. I assumed, like, that's not how I swat mosquitoes, like, with a really loud slapping. But I assumed it was one of those, there was a Russian competition where the two guys stand on either side of a podium and then just stand stock still, and then the other guy slaps him. Because if you're hearing loud slapping sounds, that's probably what it is. Because normally...
Secret Service of Texas on stage, just with the earpiece, hearing what they think are gunshots in the crowd, and just like diving in front of Ann Richards, but it's always just mosquito slaps.
Yeah, all of a sudden, like a little grease gun comes out, like, oh, it's just, oh, right, it's more loud slapping. Okay.
But Opal knew a golden opportunity when she saw one, so she nods at Lavaca and Brazos. They come with a bunch more bats from the bridge. They ate up all the mosquitoes that were bothering the folks in the crowd. When they were done doing that, they all suddenly flew up. Did they suddenly fly up, or did they just fly up? Began to swarm around the Capitol building itself, where they quickly began to eradicate a massive termite infestation that had only recently been discovered inside the building's majestic dome. So they're doing the piranhas swarming around a cartoon Amazon Explorer, where they whirl around them like the Tasmanian devil, and then it's just skeletons. They do that to the termites.
Yeah, it's so the Lord of the Rings, like ghost warriors that come and just swarm over. Like, I was trying to imagine, like, wait, there's a termite infestation inside the dome? Mm-hmm. And the bats get in there and eradicate the termites in the dome?
Yeah, they put on their little miner helmets and pickaxes and tunnel into the dome, causing even more damage than the termites had been, I suppose.
I don't know how that works. I could not figure out what the physicality of that thing is.
Cartoon physics is what it is.
Okay.
Idiocy is what it is as well. And also, it says Ann Richards was so grateful to all the bats that she asked her supporters to give them a round of applause, and they did. Then she went on with her speech. So Ann Richards was just sort of sitting there looking at her watch as the mosquitoes swarmed the crowd and ate the mosquitoes, terrifying onlookers.
So then, her security detail is like, I would suggest you just hold the speech for the moment, because there is a huge swarm of bats. They're doing something to the dome. Like, should we get a blowtorch? Like, no, just let it go, ma'am. And then 5 minutes, 10. Folks, we have an infestation at the dome, so they're taking care of it.
You knew about that, but you hadn't sprayed it or anything yet.
Finish your speech.
It's your typical swing voter. I was into what you're saying. Now I'm voting for the other guy because you paused for 5 minutes. Really?
Yes.
But I don't know. Good for the bats who are terrifying everybody on the news. But the people just sat there and watched them do that. And then Ann Richards says. Then she went on with her speech. This is what I was talking about earlier. It was? Pause for a few minutes while bats are going to eat the dome? Like, you should have been ranting on the street corner next to the pig lady or the padlock lady. Like,
during that pause, like, the food truck people must have been like, get on over here. Yeah, that's right. Come on. Hot
Flash
dogs.
sale.
Yeah, here we go. People are like, I guess she's done speaking. I don't really know. Now people are watching bats.
Or like it runs on the evening news and her opponent just sort of crops out the bats. Ann Richards paused for 10 minutes while delivering a speech today. Can we trust this woman with her finger on the button for Texas? I don't know.
Did one of those, Mitch McConnell blackouts.
There were bats. There were bats.
No, there was. It's right. You can't see it on camera, but it's right over my shoulder.
But then she says, be bold and powerful forces will come to your aid. So see, that's what she was promising Texans earlier. And that's one of those quotes that I just was like, is this her saying? Was that her campaign slogan? It's like a quote that seems to be attributed to, I think is it Goethe? Goethe. Goethe. But it's also one of those quotes that, is on a picture of Abraham Lincoln online or something like that. It's on a Jim Bro t-shirt type of thing.
Right. Chesterton said it too.
Yes, sure. Exactly.
Yes. Okay. But then she decides to be bold, and this is when it's just like, oh my God, the Gump and Co. thing. She walks up to a cool looking, so got that? Cool looking. We all know what that looks like. Red-haired lady standing right beside her at the back of the crowd. She was wearing a yellow T-shirt that said Hot Sauce Queen on it. And she was scribbling down notes in a notebook. Again, I at this point, I'm just like, all right. Who is this? And then they talk back and forth. And it's Molly Ivins. Mm-hmm. Kids?
Kids,
Molly
anybody,
Ivins.
people who didn't live in Austin in a specific window of time, like. I don't know. Maybe, there's always local news people you remember. Like in D.C., if you say Jim Vance or George Michael, people are going to be like, oh, awesome. Like those guys were, those were...
George Michael?
George Michael of the Sports Machine was the local NBC Sports.
Wow.
Yeah, sure, yeah. We all know that the George Michael bathroom is a stop on any tour of D.C.
Yeah, I guess like, local morning show clown host or whatever, Like,
sure.
Then I turned and there was a guy dressed as a clown. It was my local bozo who came on at Channel 9 at noon, and there was Cookie the Cook as well.
Bozo was trying to insulate his house, but he couldn't figure out how to get the insulation in. So I said, "You've just got to cram it, clown." And he said, "Cram it, clown?
Say.
I'm going to use that." But yeah, so Molly Ivins is a reporter. And Opal does the bats belong beneath the bridge, which in my copy, she said that in italics. And it also says Opal recited, and that's also in italics. But I guess, we had, what do we have pluralized before that was not supposed to be? It doesn't matter. Opposites.
Yeah, right. Opposites.
The editor did the opposites of what a good editor should do there. So.
Right.
And she said, I heard that blowhard Macarno on the city council is angling to get rid of them.
Oh, that blowhard. Whoa.
And then she says, that whole Macarno clan is about as crooked as a dog's hind leg, said the hot sauce queen, which, like, folksy harder, I think. If you're going to folksy, like, go all in or nothing.
I was waiting for, I think her favorite, or her famous quote was about George Bush. I think she ran against him. I forget when.
Molly or the Ann Richards?
Ann Richards, sorry.
Okay.
Ann Richards. So I was waiting for that quote with, he was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple.
Oh, nice.
That old saw. So I was waiting for that from her, and then Molly Ivins has a quote too. So I was like, are they gonna?
Oh man,
is he gonna check that box?
Go that far deep? Yeah.
Yeah, but no.
Oh well. But then Molly also says, they also own a company called Macarno Chemical that manufactures agricultural pesticides for killing the different bugs that eat up a farmer's crops. So literally, our Dynatox Industries from Karate Kid 3. And so she speculates that he wants the bats gone because it would be bad for business if the bats were eating bugs and people couldn't poison them. And
follow the money, people. Follow the money. Macarno Industries.
I will assure her that residential suburban owners will still be more than happy to use pesticides despite the presence of a couple bats. I think that's you don't have to worry about people taking the easy and cheaper way about that type of thing.
But then this reminded me of, has anyone ever said, "Hey, would you read my poetry?" or something? And you're just like, oh God, say, "Hey, can I tell you about this dream I had?"
No, Caleb.
Opal reached into her backpack and took out a copy of her bat zine and handed it to Molly. "The whole story is in this zine my friend helped me make," Opal said. "Why, thank you, dear," she said. "I'm going to read this as soon as I get home."
Toilet paper.
Yeah. I have a script in my garage. Can I give you that? I'd love to read it and give you notes on
my
that.
manager has to handle all that. You talk to him. I would love to.
Personally, I can't wait to read your script because I know it'll be good. But
to be honest, my manager's kind of a dick about that kind of thing. So if it ever gets to me, I will read it. But
I am not legally allowed to look at it because then I could get sued if any of my ideas come up in the future. So I'm going to have to say no. I'd love to.
Yeah.
My zine.
Oh, my God. No worst nightmare. And then I think Molly introduces her to Ann Richards.
Yes, then they go back to Ann, and that's when she hugs her?
Hugs her, yep.
That's what I assume that you mentioned them before, but the Secret Service, I assume, just raining blows down upon her.
No, I've got a zine. Stop. A zine.
She touched her. Move in.
And she says, please tell all the bats to come to the future rallies because she wants all the mojo they provide because it works for politics too. Yeah, so lucky that
the bats are very partisan. So
But again, good thing that Hitler didn't know about this bat thing. He could have whipped people up into an even bigger froth over there, brother.
Maybe they were, and they were just like off camera.
Sure,
back then the resolution wasn't good enough to see the bat. He was surrounded by a cloud of them.
Wow, that's where Klein got the idea. Wow. And then it moves on to Uncle Roscoe coming home, talking about his buddy Wiley Woodburn.
Yes. Wow. So this guy was, what was he? He was weaselly looking or something, or he... There's they insulted him because of the way he looked, and then he wrote this he wrote the screed, if you recall.
Screed about the bats from the paper. He
scribbled it in his own blood and feces on a wall, the screed. But now he's working with him. He's like, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, Uncle Roscoe trained him on how to use the new word processing software he'd installed in their office computer systems. If you ever interacted with your office IT guy, you've probably never been like, hey, the guy who came over and sort of like was silent for 20 seconds after I asked him a question, and then he like asked me never to do that again. I'm going to be friends with that guy.
I was just talking about one of our shared IT guys, I won't say his name, who I once, Kevin Murphy gave me a keyboard that had no markings on it at all. It was utterly black. Mm-hmm. And I used Dvorak typing, and our IT guy came in one time. I'm like, hey, I got this issue, and he like sat down and he started typing, and then he just turned to me and like 10,000 yard stare, and it was like 10 seconds of silence. Like, what? And he just like then pointed to the screen, and then he goes, I'm gonna go get my own keyboard. I'm sorry, man, I forgot. I don't know.
Let's go out for lunch. This seems like what I want to do with my spare time.
This guy seems cool. He seems to like me a lot.
But he explains that Wiley is actually an okay guy. He's just misinformed and also has a serious phobia of bats. He told me a bat flew into his bedroom once when he was little that scared the living daylights out of him, and he's been terrified of bats ever since. I think that's why he wrote the nasty article about bats. He was afraid of them. Was afraid, Opal repeated, but he's not afraid of them anymore. Uncle Roscoe smiled wide and nodded. So, kids out there, got a serious phobia? Get the hell over it. Because it's that easy.
But is this how journalism works? So, like, when I read a story and it's like, hey, man, I like that guy you just trashed. Like, oh, no, he flew into my bedroom one time and scared me. So I wrote a crappy article about it. Like, I think you're supposed to be unbiased about it. No, I can bring whatever my weird phobias are into it. Like, one time a guy who looked like him, who had a mustache, like hurt me. So I'm gonna trash him, follow him around on the political trail and trash him.
Your profile of Time Selleck did seem strangely unhinged. That was
it was really over the top.
But so if he's reporting about, this is the 80s, they're going to report about the Gulf War in a couple years. That doesn't scare them, like bombs blowing up. They're fine with that, so they can report that objectively.
I don't have a phobia about it, so I'm good. I'll be straight and narrow on that one, right down the middle.
They go on to say that Wiley was at the Ann Richards rally. He froze in terror when all the bats suddenly showed up at the Capitol. He couldn't move. Then he watched along with everyone else as they gobbled up all those mosquitoes and termites in a matter of minutes. So there's the time frame before disappearing again. And then it says, without harming anyone or infecting anyone with rabies.
Oh, well.
Well, we don't know. Like, that'll probably manifest itself within, 24 hours. But it's such a weird thing for them to keep focusing on. I looked it up again. It's on multiple states, like Department of Health websites. It's a well-known thing. So it's almost as if he wrote the book, and then someone, like the first reader, was like, yeah, I don't know, what about all the rabies bat spread? And he had to go in and just, like, insert that without any, like, actual, accounting for it in the book.
Please, double elimination.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one knows how arm wrestling works, so you got to have an announcer explaining it to them.
So this Wiley character, who was just a weasel earlier, like we said, but Wiley told me he and the other reporters at the paper have been hearing all sorts of positive things about the bats from all sorts of people all over town.
Wow.
Uncle Roscoe said he also told me he finally read the copy of your bat zine. Finally? How long has Wiley had it? I gave him and he loved it. He said it completely changed his opinion of the bats, and he's already working on a new article about them for the paper to set the record straight. Like, Wiley, your credibility is destroyed, you piece of garbage.
Yeah.
You are never writing for this paper again. Like, you got a zine from a 13-year-old, and now you're changing that? What?
Yeah.
We fact-checked this, what you wrote before. We have layers and layers of fact-checkers. And now you're going to recant that and go, you can't do that. This paper has a stance. This is the official thing of that's the stance of this paper now because you wrote it. Like
your name's on it.
Yeah, but this little girl gave me a zine. So, okay.
It's like a critic being like, yeah, I don't know, the press junket for Deuce Bigalow 2 had some good sandwiches, so like I don't know, changed my mind about the whole franchise. Yeah, well, pray, that the propagandists never find out that the way to influence Austin politics is through 13-year-old hand-drawn zines.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to print some of her illustrations in the newspaper, and it says this is just the summing up. That was how, with Opal and Uncle Roscoe's help, the Bats began to win over the local media. And it was also how Opal and the Bats became friends and trusted allies with Ann Richards, one of Austin's most powerful and influential politicians. So that's just a nice thing to sum up in a couple of sentences.
Friends. Again, this word comes up again. They also become, spoiler alert, they become friends with Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash.
Right.
Like helping her move, like going over to Ann Richards' house, like, hey guys, come on in, Bats.
Yeah, getting pocket dialed from her, like
clothesline crew. Come on in. I'm just gonna be finishing up a few things with my politics here, but you guys grab a sandwich, whatever you want out of the fridge.
Yeah, Lamar, I got that flavor of LaCroix you mentioned you liked last time. I pay attention. That's just what I do.
I'm just really sad, Bats. Like, oh, Ann Richards, I'm so sorry.
And then it says the Bats started showing up to all of Ann Richards' rallies. They made sure no one got bothered, bitten, or stung. This made them better attended and helped Ann get her message out to more voters. So just in case you really were just, still hung up on, kids playing outside and just, unable to learn how this works, they spell it out for you. And soon after that, it says, and that was how word continued to spread and the tide began to turn. There are 6 and that was hows in this book. And a lot of them start to happen now.
Oh, wow.
But it's just good storytelling. It's telling them what you told them.
Oh, you looked it up, and that was how?
Yeah, because it says, and that was how they became friends with Ann Richards, and that was how word continued to spread.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Wow.
I think it ends with one of them about Slacker. And I think that Daniel Johnson passage from Real or Fanfic also has one.
Good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Now the big Willie Nelson 4th of July picnic.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So how long have they been there? How many times?
Well, what
do kids say? How many sleeps till I get to,
God,
I hate that so much.
Well, don't yuck people's yums, Mike, about using that expression.
When they moved there and then they stayed at the hotel and then they got their house and now it's the 4th of July. I'm just trying to figure how long.
Okay.
Did they move there in June?
They left during the school year because she still had a week of school left.
Okay.
But it was the 80s, so I don't know. Without someone to explain to me, school usually let out in May in the 80s. I don't understand how things work.
Well, if you're going to write a book, please put that in the prose so that people understand. Like back in the 80s, school used to last.
Yeah, it was typical to be served pizza for lunch. But yeah, she begs him to go to the Willie Nelson summer July 4th concert, and there's some just really really gross scene. Gross. It's not gross. It just is unpleasant. It's what do you want? It's not like something gross actually happens, but she climbs on his back to beg him, and he's I've got an opal necktie around my neck. I better wash it off. it's disgusting, but like at least it's an example of them interacting in a way that's not just like, progressing the plot along. In a movie, it would be sort of like a more artfully done type of thing. But here it just, I don't know. I hate the book, so I hate the scene. It's the way it works.
I had the same feeling, and I was like, you can't, this is unearned. Get out of my face.
The little slice of life is unearned, exactly.
Yeah, unearned at all. But then they do go to the 4th of July picnic. And I thought this was Willie Nelson is a big deal. Yeah, it's Willie Nelson. He's a legend, right?
Sure, he'll always be a big deal. Even if you don't listen to his music, you know who he is.
Right. But then I just felt like Johnny Cash was like sort of thrown on. Oh, also Johnny Cash was there. Johnny Cash, absolute icon, legend. Like boulevards named after him, like statues, like Johnny Cash. Yeah, he was there too. I guess I don't know. Like when she's just like, yeah, Mozart showed up too. I don't know. It was not a big deal.
Yeah, it could have been when he was a little bit on the skids. I don't know, but probably they were doing the Highwaymen at that point in time.
Yeah, it's just an odd inclusion of like, you've already got Willie Nelson. Just stick with Willie Nelson, and then
it doesn't need to be sweetened.
You don't need to sweeten that pot.
Especially because Trinity and Colorado do get a mention, so proving me wrong. I guess they must be the country bats. They're very excited, both in bat heaven, watching Johnny Cash play several of their favorite songs, including I've Been Everywhere and A Boy Named Sue. So Trinity and Colorado have some basic ass Johnny Cash taste, is what they're saying there. Oh, I love Johnny Cash. What's your favorite song? A Boy Named Sue. All right.
I'm a huge Beatles fan. Oh, really? What's your favorite? I Want to Hold Your Hand. Okay. All right.
But it said this, before the show started, Opal asked all the bats to fly around the place, eating up all the flies and mosquitoes that would have done their best to ruin the picnic for everyone, just like they had every previous year it had been held. So the bugs ruined the picnic every previous year it had been held. Why would you keep coming back to do this? Or attending the picnic? Like,
it'd be like, hey, honey, should we go see that Willie Nelson show on the 4th of July? Like, no.
Good God, no.
Remember, I came back from that. Like, I had to go to the hospital. Like,
it was ruined.
Yeah, I was putting ice over all the bumps, but that didn't help, remember? And I went into anaphylactic shock. Oh, I remember that. That was ruined. We've
all gotten mosquito bites and been like, this is annoying for 48 hours. But to have an event be ruined... But that section ends with, and that was how the bats became friends with Willie Nelson, one of Austin's most famous and beloved musicians, parentheses, and with Johnny Cash, too. Johnny Cash had to have just been on the floor of his dressing room, hurling a whiskey bottle at the door. Like, oh, we're friends now? Oh, where's June? Oh, God, I love it.
I've been everywhere.
Our friend is throwing up now, Roscoe.
But also, the late Johnny Cash, if he saw his name in parentheses, and with Johnny Cash too, like, what the hell do I have to do, man?
Yeah.
Like, to get couldn't it just be the Johnny Cash concert? Like, come on.
I think there's an extremely famous photo of him doing a giant middle finger at the camera. That would probably be his response to this inclusion.
Exactly. But then things began to get even weirder. The 4th of July Willie Nelson concert was so weird.
Yeah, an American icon who wears red, white, and blue bandanas. Like, weird, man. Did he do the whole performance in Esperanto? Like, that would be pretty weird.
That is weird. He's gotten weird. I don't know what to say about this. Like, this next section, I think it was covered in real or fanfic. It's just too much to even take. There's one thing I wanted to bring up just on the way to the slacker part. It says, There's a small group of people gathered on the sidewalk out in front of Quackenbush's coffee house. Oh, yeah.
Parentheses, its full name was Captain Quackenbush's Intergalactic Dessert Company and Espresso Cafe. Is that the worst parenthetical in 372 history? I mean, it was just on the heels of and with Johnny Cash too, but
it's pretty bad. There was like a second where I was tempted to like, all right, I'll look it up, and then I'm like, no, that's what he wants. You're only feeding his. I'm not going to do that. So I did not look it up, but I assume it's just something that he walked by when he lived in Austin or whatever.
Sure.
Like, God.
Yeah. Ugh. But Opal, she sees some guys with a weird piece of equipment and realizes it's Rick and Lee, and their friends were making an independent movie called Slacker, because Maria had told her all about it, and Opal had seen the flyers they'd put up along the drag, also known as Guadalupe Street, inviting people to audition for the role in their film. Have you seen Slacker?
I probably tried to watch it and shut it off. No, I have not seen it all.
That's what happened with me. In the middle of high school, when I'll admit I had a Kevin Smith phase. And
all right.
in
let's get that clean. Can we get that?
That's I
right.
did a lot of things. Some people live under the bridge and do heroin. I was a Kevin Smith fan.
Sure.
But he evangelized for that book because there was a book written about like the independent film scene of the 90s.
Sure.
Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes that mentioned Slacker specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember renting it in a phrase, when my friend would have been like, let's rent, The Rock, or, let's rent, Cruel Intentions so we can see Sarah Michelle Gellar kiss somebody type, that thing. I was like, how about Slacker? Like, it's like a Kevin Smith movie. And I think my friend was like, I gotta go. What are we watching here? And I was like, I'm not going to sit in my basement and watch this by myself. Like, this is supposed to be something oh well. I'll revisit it sometime. But
there was a time where I looked up a list of like, the books that you should read before you die kind of a thing,
Uh-huh.
And so I was like in high school or something, and I like get them all from the library, and I've got this big stack of books, and like the first one was Thackeray's Vanity Fair. And I'm like a chapter in, I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work out for me. Yeah. I'm not going to get through this stack of books.
Of a time and place, perhaps.
I'll set them on my desk, and then when people ask me about them, oh yes, I'm reading William Thackeray's Vanity Fair.
To get around to that one, yes.
but I'm not going to actually read them, no.
Yeah, and that's okay. You don't need to. The canons change all the time. I think that according to Apple, Taylor Swift's 1989, as of last week, is now a better album than Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. So things are always changing.
Things change.
It's important to roll with those. But it says that the bugs, the bats come, and the actors had been unable to focus because they were eating the mosquitoes. They were slapping them all the time. The bats eat them. This made things a lot easier for the actors who appeared in the movie, and for Lee, who was the cinematographer, and Rick, who was the director. So, 11-year-old who wrote in the fan fiction, I assume you appreciate that clarification. It was probably gnawing at you which one was doing which role.
Also, really glad that you called out that where they lived in a house nicknamed the Finger Hut, because it had a big pointing finger painted on the side of it. Now, Finger Hut is a sort of a famous company too.
Oh, really?
I believe the guy who I happen to know the person. I met the person who ran Finger Hut.
Okay.
And he's I believe the second biggest fraud since
wow
in American history. Who was the guy? The
Bernie Madoff.
Madoff. He's right behind Madoff in terms of like defrauding people.
Wow.
Anyway, and he ran the company Finger Hut. So it's just like, what are you calling that out? Like the name of the place that they rented in the 80s in 1984 that Richard Linklater and his roommate had the place called Finger Hut? Like,
I mean,
okay. Again,
sometimes
8-year-olds, huh?
Yeah, if you're young, if you're impressionable enough, you think someone is cool, whatever they talk about, you're also going to think is cool. So if you're in the Venn diagram of 12-year-old reading this book who thinks Ernest Cline is cool, I'm sure that you now have Finger Hut saved and you're going to beg your parents to take you to on summer break. But parents, if you're listening, don't give in.
No.
And then it says that Opal was given a small role in the movie as a girl selling cans of soda to people on the drag. I assume you did not look into that. I did not either. If that is something that is something that if you're familiar with Slacker makes you go, huh, Please let us know if that's one of those things.
Yeah, I did not look into it again. Like, I'm not going to look into Dr. Quackenbush's intergalactic dessert company. I'm not going to look into this either.
But then it ends. It has the picture of the famous girl from Slacker who's on the cover, and then it has Rick and Lee. And that's how Opal and the Bats made friends with Richard Linklater and Lee Daniel and helped out the crew of Slacker, one of the best films ever made about Austin and the people who live there. So I'm sorry that we spoiled that in the Real or Fanfic last time, but it was, I'm sorry, in the episode description, that was where we read up to.
Do you think you could get your brother and sister to recreate a thing of like, well, Rick and Lee came out of the finger hut that day. No, you're getting ahead of me now.
Yes, that's
and
right.
That's how Opal and the Bats made friends with Richard Linklater and Lee Daniel.
And now you know
the rest of the story.
It is. Wow. It all ties together. That's an impressive callback action here on 372.
Yes, that would be, I'm sorry, only Patreon people will know what we're talking about there, but it's a
I'm not
one.
sorry. Pony up. Well, that's the end of this section. We're going to finish the damn book for next time, but not before we delve into the shocking listener emails that I promised.
Mail call!
Okay, here are the emails that we hinted at earlier. I think that I will start with the shocking ones. We'll see what else we have time for. I'll start in order of less shocking to more shocking.
That's a good order.
yeah.
Yes. I'm
Here
preparing
is-
to be shocked.
Yes. Here is email from Kate. She says, I think Mike might have been right in the first episode that perhaps someone else wrote some or most of this book. I'm a children's and teen collection development librarian, so my job is to buy books for our library system. A few months ago, our book vendor, a major distributor to libraries and bookstores everywhere, had Bridge to Bat City by Alice Scott on their upcoming hot titles list. I couldn't figure out why because I'd never heard of that author. Then I saw the cover, which has Ernest Cline of the author, and I figured it was ghost written. This still happens a lot with children's books. Now, in most places, the metadata has been updated to list Ernest Cline as the author instead, but if you Google Bat City and Alice Scott, several major bookstores, including Powell's, like the Portland realtor, still have her listed as the author in the item details at the bottom of the page. And I confirmed that. Powell's Books still does have that. Other places do as well. Mike is also right that this is a middle grade book and the kids like to read up, reading about slightly older kids, something he said in the first episode about this book. This is definitely aimed at ages 9 to 12. By the way, I only bought 4 copies of this book for my entire 15 library system, and only one is checked out. I guess I overbought. So that's pretty interesting.
Wow.
Very interesting.
What? So no explanation of why that would be. Why would you put it out under the real author and then go, oh no, we made a last minute deal or something? Like, let's just call it one of your books.
This was people were telling us about this 6 to 8 months ago, I feel like. So like, Ernest Cline, will release his book, but really Ernest Cline is at that level? Like, he can just have someone else do it and it's a big enough deal that he slaps his name on it. And it's, that just boggles the mind. What else is he doing now that he can't crap out Bridge to Bat City in a month?
It's just a Ready Player, just another Spielberg thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Didn't famously Dolly Parton, who's huge right now, I'm told, when she wrote Jolene, the Colonel and Elvis paid her a visit. And we're like, we heard this or we know this song or something, I don't know. But they did their deal of Elvis will sing this song, but he has to get writing credit for it. And Dolly Parton is like, no, I'm not going to do that. Even though she was, at the time,
struggling.
Nobody. Yeah. And Elvis is going to just take credit. So is Ernest Cline thinks he's like Elvis and the Colonel coming in all right, little darling, I'll take credit for your bat story as long as I can put in a thing about Richard Linklater.
Yeah, so that's the thing, though. We just read so many Klein things, and the Fruity Pebbles and Robotech type of thing is
Yeah.
Stakeable, but like there were other parts where he was like, well, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Weird.
collaboration, give her notes type of thing.
Yeah. Please,
Alice. Yeah, if you're listening, please write in. Tell us what
Yes.
those arrangements you're not allowed to talk about, right? That's why it was the guy who did claimed to do Tyra Banks's book was so surprising because he admitted after the fact. But
yeah, I know a person who has written. Well, yeah, I can say this. She's written cookbooks.
Okay.
For like dozens for famous.
Lauren's sister's done that for less famous people, but
for famous people, and then it's just NDAs.
Huh.
So I'm like, for who? I can't tell you. That's the whole point. Like, come on, you can tell me. Like, no, that's how an NDA works.
Yeah, you're the one of the few people I will never tell because you have an audience. So very interesting stuff. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know how it affects things, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, and that was the least shocking?
The least shocking.
My God. All right. Well, let's go.
The first one, I'm going to have to send you a link, and I will post it for everybody to see as well. But I just sent you a link to an image gallery. This is from Jay. It's shocking how closely some of these illustrations resemble tracings from one of the first Google image search results for these names. And so Jay has sent along a lot of different photos of the illustrations from Bridge to Bat City compared to the image search things he found. There's Anne Richards' Wikipedia photo, very similar to the illustration. There's one of a musician from later in the book. There's one of the Congress Avenue Bridge, a Buddy Holly, Daniel Johnston, where instead of holding a Slurpee cup, he's holding a tape that looks much bigger than a tape ever would be if it was held in real life because it's not the same size as a Slurpee cup. There's one of Leah Me. There's one of Lord British, where he says, I don't think that the illustrator realized that he was holding a helmet on his knee because it wasn't included in the illustration. There's one of, who was the woman that was mentioned that wasn't Sean Colvin? Lucinda Williams. I found the one of the picture of the pig lady while we were doing the episode. There's Robert Rodriguez, Sean Colvin from her headshot. There's one of the woman from Slacker, where he said that's not even an image from the movie; it's just from a still that's on the a behind the scenes still from IMDb of her looking at like a slide or something. And then the best one is of Uncle Roscoe's TRS-80 with his crop rotation software.
Yeah.
That is distinctly, like you could see the cables going into the computer. You could even see that one of the books is called Using the TRS-80 in the Same Position, smaller than the other books on the bookcase.
Wow.
And then there's one of Willie Nelson's 4th of July thing and of Willie Nelson where like there's people sitting in the same poses as this photo of Willie Nelson's 4th of July thing. The trees are in the same positions. There's someone in a chair sort of like with a hat on looking, angling to the right. But, once again, just like Sussy, like, I don't know what to call this. I guess you can do this, trace it, put a filter on it.
Is that allowed?
It's like Wikipedia, like that always has a photo that you're allowed to repurpose. That's why so many of them are from Comic-Con or something. But all these other ones look like they're clearly a copyrighted photo.
Don't you have to substantially change the item? Isn't that part of... I don't know. Wow,
and some of them
are identical.
They're incredible. They're, I'm sure that they sort of a lot of them look like the Aha Take on Me style video.
Sure.
So that maybe you can even do that with a Photoshop plugin or something, reduce them to those line drawings. Because some of them are Opal's journal scratchbook drawings, but other ones are just the ones from, inside the book. So
yeah. God, that's incredible. Wow. And that's just like taking the first image, right?
He said the first image, like the pig lady one, I had to click on the first image and see more related ones where she's actually with a pig. But, it took me 5 seconds as we were talking about this in real time to find it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And for the what was the name of the ghostwriter, Alice Scott? I just double checked to make sure that wasn't the name of the illustrator. It's not.
Okay.
So
this, no matter what, can we clearly say that this is phoned in, probably less than phoned in. At least a phoned in performance is like, this is Krusty the Clowning it in the worst way, right?
I think so. I mean, I definitely phoned in and but also borderline
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. But I'm just saying, at the very least, it's like the laziest.
Yeah, because draw Willie Nelson's 4th of July concert. Why do you need to see what it actually looked like? It's we all know, draw Willie Nelson. You could do that from memory, I'm sure. Less so for probably Daniel Johnston or Robert Rodriguez at the Pig Lady, but draw Leia Me. It doesn't. I don't know. Whatever.
Wow, that's incredible.
So yeah, very exciting to hear what people have to say about that. Maybe they can find some other ones. Let's do a few more emails because I think we have some time. Yeah. Mick Shoggoth. Mike, curious about any thoughts you might have about Frank Zappa. I'm not sure if you're a fan or not. I know someone on MST clearly was. If you find value in his music, I'd love it for you to do some version of a classical mini on that.
Oh, that's a tough one. A lot of the people at MST were Zappa fans. I'm not going to call them out by name because it wouldn't be. I would let them speak for themselves. But here's a weird fact. While he was dying, he was sick and he knew that he was going to die. He called MST and would have conversations with just like, hey,
wow.
This is Frank. I saw this show and there was a robot being roasted over a spit and I thought it was hilarious. I have a script. Would you guys look at my script?
Wow.
And then he sent a massive script to us.
Like fan fiction, essentially? Like a spec?
No, like a spec script, like a movie script.
Oh, wow.
Give me notes. And it was 400 pages or something.
Man.
So anyway, I was like, I'm not really a fan, so I don't want to comment on it. And
yeah.
But then everyone else would get on calls with him, and I'd be like, I don't want to,
right.
I don't want to do this because I won't know what to say or anything. But he seemed like a decent guy, and so that's my only Frank Zappa's. I don't really have a connection to him, so
nice.
Sorry.
Yeah, me neither. I've never sat down and tried to listen to it. Yeah. It was always just.
But I had a older cousin who was like an uncle to me, that kind of relationship. We're you should listen to Frank Zappa, and he started to play one of his early things for me, and I was like, yeah, I don't think so. He's like, no, he's a really good composer. You'd like him because he's such a good composer. I'm like, okay, I'll slowly discover him. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Nice. All right, that should suffice then. Jens, I don't remember when we talked about this, but he says, since you did ask, here's a picture of the rig I frequently use to listen to the podcast. And I'll send you the picture of that right now. It looks like a hell of a rig. But it's very funny to imagine our voices and various dark web recreations coming through this very impressive and expensive looking tube amp system. Maybe you can have some comments about what you're seeing there. I've got the Hollow Spring 3R 2R DAC feeding into 2 amps, one solid state Hollow Bliss, and one output transformerless tube amp from Deckware. I also sometimes run that tube amp as a preamp into the Bliss. All depends on what type of headphone I am using. And yes, I am a huge Rush fan, and Rush sounds incredible.
I love it. Wait, what are the speakers? Are those Newmans I see up there? I can't see the badge on them, but I can. They look like Newmans.
He didn't specify.
Okay, all right.
Josh writes in and says, a wee bit too late for this to be relevant. There's even a chance someone else brought this up, as I haven't listened to the last 2 Caleb's Dreams episodes, but I was just searching on Twitter/X for Caleb's Dream and saw this post from an older account from Caleb Varney, which at least clears up where the name he once used to sign a letter in the book came from. And it is a X account called @Randolfo77. So that was the name he used. And it says, all lowercase, hey, I'm looking for an editor for my book, Caleb's Dream. 4 period ellipses, thanks, comma. Ends the sentence. No. So that's, and when was that from? I think that was from December 23rd, 2011.
Wow.
This is from Theodore. After a lot of discussion on the Discord over the timeline weirdness of Bridge to Bat City, as well as Klein's omission of socio-political situations that would affect the plot, I've determined that Klein is not writing about the 1980s at all, but an imaginary decade I've dubbed the Kleinteen-80s. The Kleinteen-80s differ from reality in several ways, including but not limited to the following. While mostly parallel to the 80s, the Kleinteen-80s includes events from as early as 1973 to as late as 2002. the Satanic Panic, the AIDS crisis, Iran-Contra, the Cold War, and all other problems caused or exacerbated by American culture and politics never happened. The home video game crash never happened. As a result, Atari remained the dominant video game console manufacturer, while Nintendo and Sega only produced arcade games. 4, there were no books whatsoever. 5, the only films and music produced were immensely popular mainstream works. Notably, the punk rock and heavy metal movements did not occur. 6, pet armadillos were legal in Texas. Different sources contradict each other on whether this was true in the real 1980s. And 7, bats were immune to rabies. There's rose-tinted glasses, and then there's whatever Klein looks through to see the Klein-teen 80s.
I would like him to do the "We Didn't Start the Fire" with the Klein-teen 80s.
We cannot have a second Klein-related "We Didn't Start the Fire" parodies, but yes, it would be very fun to the rose-tinted glasses version.
Yes.
Brian R. Oh, this is the one we read earlier about when Keep Austin Weird started. Julia wrote in from Germany to say, last summer my cat Thaddeus caught a bat on the balcony of my parents' flat. We found little Batman injured the next day and brought him to a shelter where they tried to nurse him back to health. He would eat and be active, but he couldn't fly anymore. But they found out his back was broken, so they had to euthanize him. 2 days later, Thaddeus caught another one, killing it this time. I hoped my cat would stop killing bats. I was also worried about him because I knew that bats carry diseases. Well, after killing 2 bats, Thaddeus indeed got his paycheck. He became ill just some days after the last catch. He got a really nasty cold with fever. We had to treat him with antibiotics and inhalations, and he suffered for over 2 weeks. He is completely fine now, although I don't think he has learned his lessons. When I look into his little yellow eyes, I can see that he would do it again. Stupid little bastard. Wow. She has lots of other facts about what bats are able to do for pollination and how this is a rare case that requires lots of close contact, but bats can make you sick. So,
yes, wow, something he just completely goes over that, right?
And it goes on to have this one from Jay, who says the article Klein references in the book from the Austin American Statesman is real. He includes a screenshot of it, which I will also post. But it says, as he summarizes it, some takeaways. 4 persons have been bitten by bats in Austin. This is from an article that was published in September 23rd, 1984. 4 persons have been bitten by bats in Austin in the past 3 weeks. Dr. Phil Zablayat, Dr. Phil, Chief of Community and Preventive Medicine for the Austin Travis County Health Department, estimated 2 to 3% of bats are rabid. Dr. Nieto, Chief of the Brackenridge Emergency Room, said people who are bitten or scratched should contact a physician immediately. So that's the screed they were publishing when the bats moved in. Just
wow, was it the actual caution. Guy? Did they use his name?
I don't know.
Wiley, right?
That's a good question.
Wow, that would be quite a slander on an actual person.
Yeah, so impressive stuff.
Just putting out bad facts, man. It's not a screed.
No, it was by Bob Banta. So maybe but an alliterative name. So
yeah.
This is from Matthew. I've got a bit of 372 related good news in my life I'd like to share with you. We can end on this one. Last year, when you guys announced what you were doing, the Starlight Barking on your podcast, it got me to read the novel for the first time. I recall that you two had a lot to say about the book's rather unorthodox philosophical and political ideas. As it turns out, so did I. After those episodes aired, I began working on an academic paper exploring the novel's utopian theme. And now for the good news, I received word just today that the paper has been accepted for presentation at the annual conference of the Pacific Ancient and Modern Language Association, PAMLA, later this year. I wanted to write it and say thank you for providing the initial spark of inspiration that got this project rolling. And don't worry, I'll be sure to give 372 pages a proper shout out when I deliver my presentation at the conference this year. Keep up the good work. All the best, Matthew S. Dentis. So that's wow. That's a nice little butterfly effect.
That is very impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
So I assume like fascism and saluting and lots of like putting the images up on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you. That's nice.
Yeah, that's congratulations and thank you for the shout out in advance. It will be cool to see if your doctorate or whatever is retracted following this. Decent chance. That one, not the last one. This is the last one from Mark. Mark, who submitted Caleb's Dream. I don't think we knew Dwight David Thrash also wrote a picture book for the dedication for all the children that read this and to decide to become a forensic CPA. And he is, David Thrash has written a book called Titus Uno is a Forensic CPA, and it includes pictures such as a fedora that says Titus Uno is a forensic CPA, and then there's a TI-84 calculator. Titus Uno deals with numbers every day. So I don't know if the whole thing rhymes, but it is apparently a 16-page book, and both of those things I just read you are their own page. So probably not worth a purchase.
Wow, yeah, especially if it's, one of those, it's like, $65 because there's only 3 of them or whatever.
Yeah. Well, great emails. Let's finish with some dumb sentences.
Dumb, 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 dumb sentence of the week.
All right, more dumb sentences submitted by our beloved Patreon listeners at patreon.com/372pages. This one is from Harris. And while they were eating up all those bothersome bugs, they were doing it to the greatest soundtrack imaginable, grooving to all the best music being performed by all the best musicians from all over the world. And he said this one sentence encompasses everything, every horrible thing about this book. Janelle submitted the last sentence of the reading, and that's how Opal and the Bats made friends with Richard Linklater and Lee Daniel and helped out the crew of Slacker, one of the best films ever made about Austin and the people who live there. Alejandro submitted, at the end of the show, Willie Nelson went up to the microphone and declared it to be the best 4th of July picnic he'd ever had. And he told the audience that he sure hoped those bug-eating bats would come back again the following 4th of July and on every 4th of July after that. He wondered if Willie Nelson can sue the publisher for libel. I hope not, because, Nick Nolte might find out about that if that was ever possible. Claire submitted, the people who live in Austin are called Austinites. And she says, I posed this hypothetical question to my 10-year-old son. If I was going to tell him a story about Austin, Texas, and I started calling people Austinites, what do you think it would meant? He said, that they were people who lived in Austin. And she says, that's why this is my dumb sentence. It shows how dumb this author thinks his target audience is. Nathan submitted Beg Old Man, which is from the necktie scene that we glossed over.
Oh, right.
Mike submitted, they got there a little early to make sure they were among the first people to arrive. And he said, this reminded me of how Klein described swooping in at the end of an auction on eBay in Ready Player One like he invented it. I don't specifically remember that, but it sounds vaguely familiar. He also submitted this one because we didn't read it in its full. Uncle Roscoe said it was one of the least expensive neighborhoods to live in because no one wanted to live near the university except students, and they usually didn't have much money, so the rent around there was usually pretty cheap. And Mike said, so it was cheap because it was near the school, which is why it was cheap. That's not a sentence, it's a Mobius strip. Jay is the one who submitted, it was a tiny blue 2-bedroom cottage with hardwood floors and push-button light switches and a tiny little backyard with a big old Texas live oak tree that made it nice and shady. And he says, are most trees in Texas fake or dead? Amanda submitted, but they both already had bellies full of bugs, so they just nibbled at the pineapple to be polite. She wonders if the bats are now supposed to understand and care about minor human etiquette. Emily submitted, that was when he found out her last name. Music. Brian submitted, one morning, Opal and Elena decided to ride along with Uncle Roscoe when he rambled down to his job at the newspaper so that they could visit the bats under the bridge next door. He said that might be the sentence I hate most in the podcast entire history. And he says,
wow.
If you take out the ramble, you find his sentence was far more natural and comfortable with ride along with Uncle Roscoe to his job. But Klein gratuitously made his sentence stupider, less grammatical, the final clause now dangles, and harder to parse, just so he could wedge in another pointless and irritating ramble. Colin submitted, they flew around to all the outdoor music venues and ate up all the mosquitoes, which made it a lot easier for a lot of folks to enjoy a lot of shows. A lot, you say. Jay submitted, the bats belong beneath the bridge. He said, this isn't the first time or the only time they ever said it, but I don't think it has been formally entered into the dumb sentences register. And Jacob submitted, When they were done doing that, they all suddenly flew up and began to swarm around the Capitol building itself, where they quickly began to eradicate a massive termite infestation that had only recently been discovered inside the building's majestic dome. And then he says, just did the crowd wait patiently and quietly? And then he's made the same point about termites burrow into the wood they eat, so I assume the bats couldn't get to them that easily. But we don't know, man. We don't know either. I submitted... She opened it to a blank page and began to sketch something with a pencil, while the armadillo lay at her feet, flipping its enormous tail back and forth. I bet it would have fooled you in real or fanfic. That's all I have to say.
I think all mine were covered. I have so many, but I believe everyone is pretty thorough on this, so that's good.
Well done, everybody.
Yeah, wow. And if you don't follow along, get the book so you can see the sketch of the armadillo of Ann Richards. I didn't see the armadillo on the thing that you...
It wasn't in the gallery, so
Yeah,
is it among the first Google results for armadillo? It does sort of look like the first one I see, but we'll have to...
Boy, that is an ugly one of the ugliest armadillos I've ever seen. I don't know.
Do you have anything? Thank everybody while I look up whether it is the first Google result for armadillo.
Yes, I will. Everyone, thank you for watching. If you're not on Patreon, I'm just going to make the pitch for that. Like, isn't that what you're supposed to, like, mash that like button, everyone, and, like, subscribe to Patreon because it's so cool over there. But no, we do extra stuff there.
Yeah, we have a fun thing coming up next week that you won't want to miss. I'll tease that.
Oh, yeah.
Very unique.
Yeah,
very
can we tease that?
Yeah, we got someone famous coming on.
We have a very, very famous person.
Nice.
Who's coming on. So that's pretty cool, right?
It does not appear to be the first image result, but it's also an armadillo, so I can't specifically tell.
All right,
looks like
folks.
other pictures of armadillos.
Richard Garriott is coming on. A local Austin video game. No, he's not.
Huh?
It's not who it is.
Huh?
I've never been to his Halloween thing at his haunted house.
9-year-old Jay just spit took his yoo-hoo at home. Like,
thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be back with the last. I don't have to do real or fanfic next time. Woo!
yeah, but you get to hear your statistics. So,
All right.
thank you, everybody.